JetBlue Park at Fenway South in Fort Myers, Florida. We are just 6 days away from opening day on ESPN as Buck Showalter and the Baltimore Orioles get set to take on the Boston Red Sox. And this is no ordinary spring training game. This is a game to honor and respect and appreciate the great David Ortiz and his final spring training home game in Boston. All the festivities coming up right now. Welcome to Spring Training Baseball on ESPN, presented by Head and Shoulders. Most of the Boston Red Sox regulars will be in the lineup today. As I mentioned, they'll be honoring and appreciating David Ortiz. As you can see, some of the pregame ceremonies just moments ago. David Ortiz way. That's right, Bobby, the three-time World Series champion, really kind of leaving his mark here in Florida, even getting chairs, in fact, from the places that he's played here, and certainly the fans here appreciate for all that David Ortiz has meant to them. And with that, we say welcome. It's great to have you with us alongside Dallas Braden, Tim Kirchin, and Matt Namberg. I've only been asked once before to cover a spring training game for ESPN, and that was rained out, so I'm grateful I had another opportunity. That was in Bradenton, from Bradenton to Dallas, Braden, and we try to break down what's going to happen with this Boston Red Sox team. They're trying to go last to first again, Dallas. We know it's David Ortiz's final season, but the pitching, once again, is going to be key for them.
They went out and got the reinforcements that they thought could help them project them into that upper echelon, and David Price, we know about him. For me, it's been a tale of two spring trainings between Joe Kelly and Rick Porcello. They're going to need these two young men to step up, become the pitchers and the individuals that they expect to see.
And there are questions in the everyday lineup, too, at the corners. Hanley Ramirez, can he handle first base, having played shortstop and then left field last year? All systems go so far for Hanley at first. Pablo Sandoval at third has had a back injury. He'll play tomorrow, and the hope is that he can move well enough to play third base, because if both those guys are okay, they're going to score a lot of runs.
Concerns about Pablo's fitness once again, unfortunately, here at spring training. You know, for Buck Showalter in Baltimore, they were 500 a season ago. Rather than address what was one of their concerns in starting pitching, let's just get some more power, more home runs, perhaps some more strikeouts. But Dallas, what do you see from Baltimore?
Well, you know about the big boppers. They've got some swing and miss in that lineup as well. But for me, it's about staying healthy. And I'd like to think about a battery guy. And I think about Matt Wieters. You know about the Tommy John. I'd like to see him become the catcher they think he can become. Caleb Joseph waiting behind him. But then you think about a Kevin Gossman as well. He's been in the bullpen. He's been starting. First and foremost, let's get these guys healthy. Let's keep them on the field.
This is going to be a historic year for the Orioles. The record for homers in a season is 264. And with all the people they've added in the offseason, they have a shot at that. The record for strikeouts in a season is 1,578, set last year by the Cubs. They have a shot at that, too. They have as many swing and miss guys as any team in baseball, but when they hit it, it's going to go a long way.
No matter what the records are made to be broken. Baltimore with a bunch of Dave Kingmans in this lineup is what Tim is telling us. We're looking forward to a terrific game here in Fort Myers, Florida. A lot of fun between the Red Sox and the Orioles. Also, John Kruk and Doug Landville back in the studio with live look-ins and thoughts on what else is happening here as David Ortiz will be celebrating.
I'm a competitive eater.
Spring training baseball on ESPN is presented by Head and Shoulders. Live head first. Live head first. Get the Kings in here in spring training. A live head first. And then Burke alongside Dallas Braden and Tim Kirchin. I told you, rusty when it comes to these spring training games. Orioles and Red Sox here from Jet Blue Park at Fenway South. Let's take a look. Obviously, a lot of conversation around David Ortiz. But what Buck Showalter's putting together, clearly Aaron was coming down, so he's resting a lot of his big names. But as far as the roster is concerned, we will see Joey Ricker, we will see Pedro Alvarez, who's going to be the DH, and clearly a guy they're counting on. Tim, as you mentioned, all that power, he showed a lot of it with the Pirates a season ago.
Right, and he's going to open the year as the DH. They're going to move him around a little bit. He can play third, although Manny Machado is going to play every day there. He can play some first, but he's going to be the primary DH, and then they're going to see if Mark Trumbo can play right field every day. That's a big question.
Rick Porcello is on the mound for the Boston Red Sox, and this is the first year that contract kicks in. 4 years, $82.5 million. They acquire Yoenis Cespedes, give him that huge contract a season ago, and last year was a disappointment. You do see the career high in strikeouts, but a 4.92 ERA. They're going to require much better from Porcello this season as Xavier Avery steps in for Baltimore. Dallas, you think he could be a key for Boston this year?
Absolutely, and you touched on the mark there. He said the career high in strikeouts, but coincidentally, he also saw a career low in ground balls yielded.
Avery there, sending that ball to left. And there it is, the Baltimore Orioles getting on the board. 1-0. We are actually situated right on top of the Green Monster, so maybe we'll get a ball at some point today. But Xavier Avery, his second home run of the spring.
Well, again, get used to this year for the Orioles. They're going to have a guy 1 through 9 who can hit the ball out of the ballpark. This time it was Avery. And by the way, I saw him a few years ago. Buck went to see him in the minor leagues. He came back the next day. I said, "What did you think of Avery?" He said, "Oh, loved him. Great face, square head." That's how he described him. Great face, square head. I said, "What does that mean?" He said, "Oh, that's a sign of a ball player." Really? I didn't know that.
So if you're a ball player out there, maybe in high school, if you have a great face and a square head, Buck Showalter thinks you could find your place in the major leagues. Here's Joey Rickard. You see his numbers from a season ago as he swings in the second pitch, sends this drive over to right center, and that is going to drop in between the right fielder and the center fielder. There is, unfortunately for the Red Sox, Rusney Castillo and Jackie Bradley Jr. both unable to come up with that.
Dallas, that's the center fielder's ball there. He didn't take control of that.
Correctly. You're absolutely right, Tim. He's got to be the leader out there. He's the field general. Just a little bit of miscommunication there between him and Castillo out here towards that no man's land section of the Fenway replica.
He's their best outfielder, Adnan, for sure. He's a terrific defensive center fielder there. But again, they got a little bit fouled up on who's supposed to play that ball. And Castillo could have caught it, and Bradley should have caught that.
And Bradley, we know how good defensively he is, Tim. The question is, can he hit enough at the major league levels? The Red Sox won't be as concerned. Clearly, I think the defense will be shored up by removing Hanley Ramirez from left field over to first base, and that's obviously an experiment that's going to bear watching with Sandoval now at third and then Hanley at first. But at least on paper, the Sox outfield defense should be a lot better because that play notwithstanding, you've got Bradley, you've got Castillo, and then in left field, Chris Young today. But overall in the year, it is going to be a situation that bears watching, I think, what Boston can do.
Well, between Jackie Bradley and Mookie Betts, they've got some track stars out there that can absolutely pick them up and put them down in the outfield and cover a lot of ground.
Right, and they're going to keep Mookie Betts in right field for the season, meaning he can play center field, but on a day where Bradley gets a rest against a lefty, they'll play Castillo in center or Young in center or even Brock Holt in center and keep Mookie Betts in right field because they want to keep him in one place for the whole year.
A guy that knows the challenge of playing the outfield throughout the majors, our friend Doug Glanville. Dougie, back in the studio, back in Bristol. What do you think about how this Red Sox outfield could be improved from a season ago when Hanley Ramirez was in left?
Well, Adnan, it's much improved. I mean, you have to recognize that Hanley Ramirez was completely out of position. It was not something that was going to work out. So they made the right move. And there's no question these young players with Betts and Bradley, they're very capable outfielders. They've been able to have the experience of playing center field. So now you almost have you almost have a bunch of field generals, as you mentioned, Dallas, in the outfield. So it's going to be come down to communication and their ability to have so much range you don't want to step on each other's feet. Now, in that particular play, you got a lot of wind today, 16 miles an hour. You have to communicate and call it early and make sure you back each other up. But that's what spring training is for. You make adjustments, you do what you can.
You're right about that. Certainly is the time to try to round into good enough shape for opening day. And Rick Porcello very early on here as he walks Pedro Alvarez, already getting a meeting there. So for Porcello, they hope Dallas he can use his cutter a little more, if he can kind of stay down in the zone. That was the feeling that as the year progressed, he became better in that department. But it's going to bear watching throughout the year.
Well, he yielded a career low, as I said, in ground ball rate, 45% overall. That's the low of his career. The line drive rate on the fastball, highest his career, 31%. And that's what we saw early on here, the home run and then the ball out to right center. So you'd like to see him work that fastball down in the zone. He has been able to get a couple more swing and misses on the fastball, but really it's just about leaving it up over the heart of the plate.
So first and third here for Nolan Reimold, who's the designated hitter today.
And Adnan, they have to find a number 2 starter on this team behind David Price. Joe Kelly's been the best one so far in spring training. That's what John Farrell told me today. But Eduardo Rodriguez is on this team. He's arguably the second best pitcher they have in the rotation. But he's injured. He's got a knee issue. And it doesn't look like he's going to be back to May the 1st at the earliest. So these injury issues are a bit of a concern for the Red Sox.
Yeah, they talk about the fact they don't need a 5th starter until April 10th. But to Tim's point, Rodriguez showed a lot of promise last year. And after Price, who's going to be the number 2 guy? Is it going to be Clay Buchholz? Is it going to be Rick Porcello? Joe Kelly feels like more of a 4 or a 5. And then it's Stephen Wright. I'd feel better about the comedian, perhaps. But Rodriguez is opening the season on the DL. We'll get some more Stephen Wright-isms in later in the show. I deal with Tim here. There's no doubt he and I are both going to be going to that well often.
I spilled spot remover on my dog. Now he's gone.
The greatest deadpan ever. Pedro Alvarez, by the way, stole second base. I don't know how often we're going to see that in the majors this season, but here in a spring training game, kind of notable.
Working on everything.
Is Garabez Rosa, who is up right now. He's playing second base for Baltimore today. But, of course, the second baseman, Tim, for the Baltimore Orioles is going to be Jonathan Scope. He had 15 home runs last year and a very good defensive player. He could be an all-star this year.
Buck has told me that he makes a double play as well as any second baseman in the league. When you see him up close, you can't believe how big he is. And he's really good with his feet around the bag. And you said the power. Again, they have power at virtually every position. And that's why the home run record could be in jeopardy.
A season ago, they were third in the majors in home runs behind the Jays and the Astros, and this year they could be threatening that because they added Pedro Alvarez. Obviously, the re-signing of Chris Davis was monstrous. There was a bit of a game of chicken there being played as to whether or not they're going to pony up, but they did indeed. The 9-figure contract, around $150 million. And Chris Davis is remaining with the Orioles. He also bounced back last year, Dallas, after injuries and ineffectiveness the year previous.
Well, injuries definitely have hampered the Orioles. You think about a healthy Scope along with a healthy Hardy, and maybe you plug in a healthy Wieters behind home plate, and you got Adam Jones out in center field, and that's what every team wants to do, is build the strength up the middle. And you talk about the power that Scope can provide, and Hardy up the middle as well. Like you said, Timmy, we got boppers all over the park.
Manny Machado, of course, hit 35 homers last year. And the key, though, for me, is Joey Rickard, who we saw hit the triple in the first inning. He's going to be the opening day left fielder on this team. He's a Rule 5 guy. He came out of nowhere. He has really impressed the Orioles with his defense, with his speed, with his baseball IQ. And it's rare a Rule 5 guy starts for a contending team, but that's going to be the case. This kid has won the job this spring.
Right now, there's a mound meeting here for Rick Porcello. They're trying to calm him down if he walks Nolan Reimold. Just so you know, fantasy baseball, of course, something we know a lot of you out there appreciate. Our friend Eric Carabell is here today to be part of LG Mock Draft Monday. So, ready for your fantasy baseball draft? Come draft at the ESPN.com fantasy experts today and give your draft strategy a test drive. Hey, Eric's giving the thumbs up, baby. Head to ESPN.com/Mock Draft Monday. I have been told that Dallas is also going to be a part of drafting a mock team today, so save the mockery of Dallas for when he actually does that. I don't know how proficient you are in fantasy.
With the group of friends I have at home, I have to keep fantasy baseball extremely simple. So I don't know how well I'm going to do in this draft, dealing with some real stat guys here.
Yeah, like you're living a life of fantasy. I don't know how your fantasy baseball teams do, but you're right. Maybe there's a different quality of opponent you're facing today, at least, as opposed to your homies back in Stockton.
True story.
So bases loaded here for Garabez Rosa. How much do you put? It's 6 days away from opening day, Dallas. How much do you put into the fact Porcello here is struggling? What is he working on here?
Well, right now he needs to be working on strike one and keeping the baseball down, being efficient within his pitch count, inning to inning, and batter to batter. You know, 3 pitches or less, you'd like to have action. That means he's either standing on first. Unfortunately, as you saw, he makes 3 left turns at the start of the game, but you want him out of that batter's box on 3 pitches or less. And now is when we start to need to be results-oriented as a starting pitcher. Spring training's tapering down. You've really started to polish everything that you're going to be taking into the season with you, and that's maybe pitch sequencing, how to go against a power righty, power lefty, maybe a slap lefty, slap righty, whatever it may be. But this is where you need to become results-oriented because you're looking to take this momentum into the start of the season.
Gets a strikeout here of Rosas. That's a good sign here. I don't know if you had a chance, Tim, to talk with John Farrell before the game. Did he say how many pitches he wants to see out of Porcello tonight?
They're hoping to get 6 innings out of him today, but they want to see, of course, how many pitches he throws first, how the game goes, that type of thing. And Dallas is right. This has not been a good spring for the Red Sox starting pitchers for the most part. This is a big start for Porcello. He's going to be in the rotation no matter what. But you got to get a little momentum going into that first series against the Indians because you're going to face some pretty good pitching in Cleveland.
And Timmy, to your point, and to Farrell's point as well, it's not always necessarily about the pitch count number for a starting pitcher. It does vary from individual to individual, but the up and down, getting the body up and down 6 or 7 times, that's what's important.
This is Paul Yanish here, shortstop for the Orioles, and of course the shortstop come the season starts to be J.J. Hardy. And Tim, how's he look so far this spring?
He's coming back from a shoulder injury, and he's looked great. He had a homer in 3 straight games the other day. I've seen him throw. He told me he's completely healthy. He's got a great throwing arm when he's right. He's critical to them because, again, another 20-homer guy when he's absolutely right.
That ball there hit into right, and another run is going to score. And they'll hold the runner. In fact, and now they got a full play here in the rundown. As the runner took too hard the lead there, second, thought he could advance to third instead. Stops on helmet to third, so run scores, but that's one of those outs. And if this is a major league game, somebody will be furious over that kind of base run.
I think someone's going to be furious over that in a spring training game, like the Orioles manager.
Oh, jeez. Buck Showalter can't like that. Let's take a look once again at what happened here. Is after the base hit to right, as I mentioned, the first run scores, his base is loaded, and then taking that wide turn at second, chugging hard for third. No, get back. No, and you're hung up.
He was anticipating that windmill to keep going over there in the third base's coaching box, and that didn't happen. Found himself just a little too far off second.
So Nolan Reimold tagged out there. So 2 outs here. Runners on first and third for Francisco Pena, the catcher. Speaking of catching, Tim, Matt Wieters, of course, the catcher for the Baltimore Orioles, although I think he will be pushed hard by Caleb Joseph. But Wieters is coming off Tommy John.
Right, and he is going to catch tomorrow. And they had to shut him down a little bit, but the other day he threw to the bases again, which was a really good sign. He's catching tomorrow, Buck told me. And Buck said there's a chance he'll be ready for opening day. And if it's not opening day, it'll be soon after. So that's actually really good news for the Orioles.
That ball hit to second, and Dustin Pedroia takes care of that. So 2-0 and then a shaky start here for Dustin Pedroia. We'll come up with the bottom of the first right after this. Clearly they know that Dallas Braden's here because they're playing Flow Riders Welcome to My House. That is the theme song of Dallas, I've been told. She's gotten more comfortable here at ESPN whenever he's going to be on ESPN Airwaves. That song will be appearing. John Farrell is currently appearing right now on your television in the Boston Red Sox dugout. This is the lineup today, Timmy. The good news for us, Buck didn't bring a lot of his guys, but this is a lot of players that we'll be seeing for the Boston Red Sox this season, including, of course, David Ortiz in his final year.
Right. This is a lineup. This is not their number one lineup because Mookie Betts is going to hit number one there. But there are a lot of other guys in here. Travis Shaw is a very interesting guy who's filled in at third since Sandoval's been hurt. Chris Young's going to play against left-handed pitching in left field. Blake Swihart's going to be the everyday catcher. This is going to be a very good offensive team. Again, if the two corner guys do much better than they did last year.
Mike Wright on the mound for the Baltimore Orioles, getting the start as pitching once again. Going to be a major talking point for Baltimore this season. You see the numbers last year, an ERA over 6. He was the third-round pick of the 2011 draft as he quickly gets ahead of Jackie Bradley Jr. 0-2.
Well, I tell you, and he got off to a great start in 15. 14 and a third scoreless innings between starts against the Angels and the Marlins. However, the rest of the season didn't fare so well. 8.9 ERA. 4.45 walks per 9, so he allowed a lot of base runners, and when they were on, they were scoring as well. So look for him to try to forget about that last half of the campaign and start fresh.
Jackie Bradley Jr. here lifting this ball. Is it going to drop? Yes, indeed. The Red Sox faithful appreciate that as Bradley Jr. is aboard with a single. And as we said off the top, Tim, he's extraordinary defensive. The question is, can he hit enough? 250, 260, so that the Red Sox aren't concerned about that part of his game.
Right. He's been close to 400 this spring. And again, it's just spring training. But John Farrell told me that he got a little happy with his swing, home run crazy, and his swing got a little too big, a little too long a while ago. In the second half of last year, he started to close it up a little bit, shorten it up a little bit, and that's the Jackie Bradley we've seen this spring.
And I actually had the opportunity to talk to the hitting coach for the Red Sox, Chili Davis, former hitting coach for the Oakland A's, and he told me that Jackie did a tremendous job of retaining all of the information that they had given him and passed on to him during the season last year and even through the offseason. So coming into this season and this spring training, he's picked up right where he left off as far as tutelage in the cage is concerned. He said there's never an issue taking Jackie or grabbing him and saying, hey, let's work on this, let's start here. Jackie's always ready to go, ready to click, and that's one of the biggest strengths of his, is he's ready to go to work day in, day out, brings his hard hat and lunch pail every day.
Close call there for Dustin Pedroia. And, you know, for all the talk about Ortiz's final season, and it'll be interesting to see how he does, because Ortiz is the only guy in baseball in the last 3 years who's driven in 100 runs or more. I think a lot of focus is on Pedroia as well, because of the fact he's been the constant source of production along with Ortiz for the Red Sox. He's still among the better second basemen in the game. The question is going to start to come here, Tim. People are going to start to whispering, when is he going to be in decline? A small guy, durability. We haven't seen it yet, but so far Pedroia has really been confounding the experts all along for much of his major league career.
Yeah, his numbers have gone down the last few years, but he's been hurt on and off in each of the last 3 years. And he told me again that he's healthy now, and that's a big difference.
Healthy knock there as Pedroia hits that ball in the center. Bradley Jr. advancing to third. So first and third here for the Red Sox as their offense is getting going off of Mike Wright.
And this is Mike Wright's chance to win the fifth starter's job if he has a great day today, because they got 4 guys in line for the fifth starter's job. Tyler Wilson being one, Miguel Gonzalez being another, with Kevin Gausman hurt at the moment, likely to open on the DL, probably be back either April 10th or April 13th. There are a couple spots open. This is a big day for Mike Wright, and not a good start so far.
Yes, suffice to say, both pitchers a little shaky early on here as Xander Bogaerts steps in for Boston. Rather strong double play combination there for Boston as they'll be featuring Pedroia at second and Xander Bogaerts is short. He had a terrific season last year, especially came on in the second half. As you can see his production and why, of all these young players, Mookie Betts, Jackie Bradley Jr., it feels like the most confidence Dallas, the one the guys are really buying in on, is Xander Bogaerts.
Well, he's finally been able to get comfortable and set in stone over there at shortstop. He played a little bit of third base and shortstop early on. Being able to get comfortable can do a lot for an individual, especially at the plate, knowing you're at home in the field and you can take your at-bats extremely seriously. Not that you ever give away an at-bat, but just knowing who you are as a player and where you fit into the lineup and on the roster, that can speak volumes for a young man, and I think you see him really take off because of that.
Yeah, getting comfortable, definitely a good thing in a major league clubhouse, although we here at ESPN praise uncomfortableness as well. He slaps that ball. Nice play there, though, made by the first baseman. As Xander Bogaerts thought he'd get a hit for sure, and instead, Pedro Alvarez making a nice play.
Well, that's just how you draw it up. The L5 unassisted double play. If you're a pitcher, you'll take it when you can get him.
David Ortiz steps up. The crowd wants to salute him. Well, they'll be saluting him a little bit later on, perhaps when the actual ceremonies will kick in a little bit later on. As I mentioned, in case you're just joining us, this is David Ortiz's final spring training home game. They had a brief presentation at the start of the game. You got a couple of chairs. David Ortiz way dedicated to him, and in the 6th inning, I believe it is, Tim, there's going to be something really special planned for Pop.
Right, and I was told David Ortiz doesn't know what's going to happen in the 6th inning. They just said, be prepared, we're going to do something, but they haven't. So whatever happens, and I think we know what's going to happen, we're supposed to keep it secret.
Right.
He doesn't know what's going to happen.
Tim's right. We are aware of the proceedings, and that's why we're a little bit giddy here as to what's going to be happening in the 6th. So that's more reason for you to hang in there until then. But this was before the game. As you can see, Poppy getting David Ortiz way dedicated to him, and a couple of chairs here as well. Dallas, do you have a street named after you in Stockton?
I do not. No, there might be a dirt road somewhere, but nothing paved.
There's got to be something dedicated to Tim Kirchin in the D.C., Maryland area. Anything?
No, of course not. No.
Maybe a park? I tell you what, guys, if there's like a hat chair with Timmy's name on it, that'd be perfect.
You sound like Sut.
Rick decided to drop by. Hi, Rick. Good to see you. Rick Sutcliffe is here. Hey, guys. Just wanted to see my little buddy. There are some Kirchin bobbleheads floating around. That is true. We don't have streets or chairs, but bobbleheads are very big.
There are 2 bobbleheads, and as Sut likes to say, they're both actual size.
Good times. By the way, Sut the other day, in case you're watching the Cubs game on ESPN, Cubs-Giants Thursday night, in full uniform. You could have confused him for Joe Madden's bench coach.
Well, he came on over after the Sin game on the backfield.
They were concerned about running out of pitchers. Sut was available and ready to go if need be. Joe Madden was clearly aware of that. Poppy here on a 2-2 count. Lifts that pitch into right, but settling under that is the right fielder, Joey Ricker. So Poppy makes a loud out, but it's 2-0 for Baltimore. We're through 1. Lots more coming up here from Fort Myers.
Here's It's really cool because it just shows that, you know, there's a lot of young kids that are getting better and better, and this is the group that you're going to play with for your career. Correa and those guys, I'm sure will eventually have like a lifelong friendship just because we played for however many years together.
Adnan Burke alongside Dallas Braden, Tim Kirchin. We'll be hearing from Keith Law and Eric Karabell as well. As you can see, the bunt attempt there is successful here for the Baltimore Orioles, who welcome in Mookie Betts. You know, there's a reason that there's so much optimism around the Boston Red Sox here, and one of those reasons is you, Mookie. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Oh, thanks for having me, guys.
We are on top of the Green Monster, but we can get a decent vantage point of you here. Dallas Braden's waving at you right now, so at least you want to know where you're looking at. But we are the three wise men. What's it been like for you so far this spring? How have you been feeling?
Oh, it's been fun. I mean, especially with it being David's last spring training. You know, it's been a lot of cameras and whatnot, and you know, we've been laughing and joking and, you know, really enjoying it.
Mookie, it's rare for a young player to identify a problem that he's having and then go fix it. And I'm told you're really good at that. Hey, I got to work on this, and you get a coach to go help you. Where does that come from for you?
It comes from my parents. You know, they tell me, you know, you have to be honest with yourself. And, you know, I know my problems, and I know with the coaching staff I have here, you know, we can get it resolved at some point.
Hey, Mookie, this is Dallas Braden. How you doing, bud? Want to talk to you a little bit about, obviously, the world knows, and we got a first-hand look.
That ball there hits a second, retired for one. Go ahead, Dallas.
We got to look at your defensive prowess, and we know how you act. We know how you are at the plate and on the base path. Tell me and tell the fans, what is the best part about your game, or what do you feel is the biggest strength of your game and how it helps in this lineup?
I definitely think you know, being able to run the base as well, because we got some bangers behind me. So you know, with me just getting on first, you know, trying to get in the scoring position. Obviously, you know, still in some bags, but you know, with PD and Bogey and David behind me, you know, I'm always a threat to score from first. So I make sure that I get good reads and whatnot, and try and cause some havoc on the bases.
You mentioned the fact that, Mookie, that David Ortiz's final spring training home game. Certainly, you think about veteran players, star players in the game, the way that they make younger guys feel comfortable. And I think of David immediately, the fact he always seems to be joking around with you guys. He's a big, gregarious personality. What's he been like for you individually as far as offering any sort of tutelage or mentorship?
He's kind of like, you know, Dad. You know, he's always that guy you can go talk to about anything. You know, whether it be defense, hitting, base running, whatever. You know, he's done it all at some point in his career. So, you know, I make sure that when I think about things, I run it by him and see what he says, and he usually checks it off and say that's good, or he'll give me another way to think about going about a process. But he always says that it's a process, going through everything in this game, and you know, not to worry about the results so much as getting through the process, and then the results will come.
Mookie, I'm going to need you to pump the brakes on the base running advice from Poppy, my friend. Let's be real. You're not kidding anybody up here, all right? Maybe the approach at the plate.
About that. Yeah. I have asked him about some defensive things, and then some mostly just hitting. But yeah, he clogs up the bases.
Mookie, as we know, is a great bowler. So how many perfect games this winter, Mookie, and how many in your career now?
I have 7 in my career, and this offseason I bowled 4.
Oh, stop it!
That's not a lot, seriously.
Yeah, this is Mookie. We're actually looking at video right now. This is one of your 300 games. This was posted on your Instagram at Mookie Betts.
Yeah,
that's unbelievable. Like, this is legit. I wasn't sure if you were being.
No, they were all in league play. So yeah, I got a couple rings.
Okay, I think of bowling, and Timmy and Dallas know what a movie guy I am. I think of the Big Lebowski immediately. So you're telling me it was a league game? Like, I think of Walter and how upset John Goodman gets at Donnie because of the fact it's a league game and certain violations. Are you taking this as seriously as Walter does in the Big Lebowski?
I haven't seen that movie, but yeah, I take it pretty seriously.
It's the greatest movie about bowling ever. You need to watch that once this game's over.
He just left you Munson out in the middle of nowhere right there.
When did this love for bowling come about? Is this something as a kid you did with folks?
Yeah, with my parents, actually. My mom told me she went into labor the same night she finished her bowling league. So, you know, she finished, and then you know, I was born, and then I know she used to, my dad used to take my playpen into the bowling alley and, you know, let me be in there while they bowled.
I thought you were going to say after the game she delivered you and then went right back because you had to finish.
No, she didn't. I don't know.
Got to clean up that 10th frame. That would have been impressive. Your teammate Rick Porcello gets a strikeout here. So 2 outs here in the top of the second. You know, pitching is going to be really important for you guys this year. Obviously, the acquisition of David Price. What does he mean for you now to have a big-time ace like David?
And, you know, I think it just kind of solidifies everything. I think everybody just kind of falls into place after. And, you know, I think with him being here, you know, everybody will kind of step up and try and put up the numbers that he does, and it'll elevate everybody's game.
Mookie, John Farrell told me before the game that he's going to keep you in right field for the season, even though we know you can play center field. Is that okay with you? He said we want to keep him in one place so he can just concentrate on one spot. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. As long as I'm in the lineup, that's the more important thing. You know, just try and help the team. You know, in whatever spot I am.
If it wasn't okay with you, would you have told us right now on ESPN?
Probably not.
Fair enough. That would have been amazing because, you know what, I'm really not into it, but I'm going to do whatever John Farrell tells me to do. I'll fly out there. Mookie Betts, great stuff, man. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Baltimore Orioles leading at 2-0. Give you a lot of Mookie Betts doing some great plays with Boston this year. We're back with more from Phil Myers after this. As we continue here, the Baltimore Orioles taking on the Boston Red Sox. ESPN Fantasy Baseball is back, and it's free. Go to ESPN.com/fantasybaseball or download the brand new app to sign up today. And ready for your fantasy baseball draft. We'll talk more about what we're doing today with the LG Mock Draft Monday, as Buck Showalter kind of to join us here of the Baltimore Orioles. Thanks so much for coming on with us, Buck.
Guys, what's the comfort level up there?
I'm glad you asked, Buck, because you know...
obviously, ESPN didn't ask you.
You know our boy Timmy can handle anything.
Yeah, they must have looked up there to put that side in December.
Well, Dallas Braden can be a little pale up here, Buck.
I hope he ain't got that third piece of that suit on today.
He's already got the sleeves rolled up, Buck.
He's got rolled up. How we doing, man?
This is great. Keep it rolling. Open mic with Buck. We love it.
I have more.
Please keep going. Go ahead, Dallas. What do you got?
I got nothing, Rick.
Buck, this is Tim. We'll try to get back to baseball here. Mike Wright's throwing today. This is important for him, correct?
Yeah, they all are, obviously, but we're, oh boy, there. And, Michael's had a good spring. He's got a big arm, and he's come to camp in great shape. We're real proud of him. He's competing and got a real opportunity here. That's the only thing we do. We can give him opportunities from teams, and Mike is trying to take advantage of it. Today's another day to look at him.
Yeah, you've got tons of power, Buck, and we'll talk about that offense in just a second. But with regards to your starting pitching, concerns from a season
Let's talk about the power.
Okay, let's go. You know what? You're right. Let's go positive first.
Hey, never overlook orchids while searching for roses. I kind of like where we are. There's some people that have shown a track record of pitching successfully, a la 2014, whether it be a Chris Tillman, and so on, that we're in Miguel Gonzalez, we're counting on them to revert to form a little bit. Not that they had anything to be apologetic about last year, but they spoiled us with a heck of a level. Attaboy! So we'll see. We added Gallardo, and Jimenez might have had our most consistent year of anybody last year. And we've got some young people. We're trying to decide if we've got inventory or we got depth. There's a big difference.
As far as catching goes, Buck, how is Matt Wieters doing physically coming back from the bit of the throwing issue?
Good. He caught a game yesterday. Things went well. I think there were 7 stolen base attempts off of him. It was an inter-squad game, so we had guys go. And he's sore in the right places today, and he'll catch again tomorrow, and he's got a good shot at making opening day.
Hey, Buck, if he isn't ready for opening day by some unseen chance, talk about how important it is to have a guy like Caleb Joseph behind him, being able to have that staff comfortable with both of those young men.
Well, Dan Duquette and our whole front office staff did a good job of providing what ifs. We got one here today, Tony Pena's son, Francisco, another kid named Audrey Perez, and some young catchers on the horizon. We obviously love the feeling of having Matt and Caleb there, and it's something that I think it's important. Anything our pitchers like throwing to both of them, and that's unusual. And they're both on the same page. Caleb was pulling for Matt to sign and come back because he knows he can help us win. And we're going to have periods we're going to need both of them. It's comforting for me to know that we have 2 guys that can perform at a championship level behind the plate.
Buck, tell us what you've seen from Joey Rickard in right field.
We don't want to talk about him anymore. I want to put him out in right today and try to give him some looks of where he might play during the season. But, more times than not, I have a lot of respect for the Rule 5 draft. We've been real fortunate in it with Flaherty and McFarland and Jason Garcia last year, and that's only on the board.
Indeed, that ball hit deep to left over the green monster. This is the right of actually where we are here. We jinxed you, Buck.
Yeah, that's all right. But I appreciate you taking my mind off of it. No, but Rick's been solid. He's had a big spring for us since the day he walked in. He's trying to make a club, and he's not intimidated by it. There's another stage that goes on in April, and we know spring training is a big fooler, and most of the time you find out what other clubs already know about him. But we like him, and we think he's got a chance to be a contributor for us, and we got a decision to make here shortly whether we keep him.
Chris Young, the home run, making it a 2-1 game here in the bottom of the second as we continue with Buck Showalter. It's a good expression to use, Buck. Spring training, the great fooler. With those 6 days left to go here, what are you looking at? What do you want your players to do? Clearly, you don't have all of your big names out here today, but what are you kind of focusing on?
Oh, these are all somebody's sons. They're the best player on a lot of teams, and I know you don't mean that derogatorily, but these are our what ifs. A lot of them, a couple of these guys are going to start for us, but these are what are going to allow you to maintain long-term success during the course of the season. But the biggest thing that I want to get out of these last few days, as every manager will tell you right now, is the healthier players. We all know spring training is about a week or so too long, and it's all about the pitchers getting ready, and our guys are looking forward to getting going north, and especially to Baltimore, and be a part of that. But just the health, knock on wood, we got Gosman and Matt, and I'd have signed up for blood for that to come out of spring training with just those 2 question marks physically.
I mentioned the power. I mean, you guys 3rd last year in home runs behind the Jays and the Astros, and you could threaten not only the record for home runs in a season. Well, there you go.
How about record?
Good stuff, Buck. Appreciate it.
All right, yeah, you got to stay cool. Get one of those fans.
We'll count down. Let's have it rolled up for you. Mike Wright looking good there. It's Buck Showalter. 2 more, we go top 3.
on MLB The Red Sox. The World Series heydays of Big Papi officially vanished.
This is jack to left, and it is back, and it is gone.
As the Sox suffered their second straight last-place finish. Now, David Ortiz kicks off his farewell tour, joined by David Price.
He struck him out. That's 10.
A revamped rotation and closer, Craig Kimbrough.
Well hit, puncher back. Out of here! Grand slam, David Ortiz!
Is there one last gasp of Ortiz October magic to be sparked?
The leader of the Boston Red Sox for so many years, David Ortiz, entering his 20th Major League season, going to be 14 years with the Boston Red Sox, and in many ways one of the great second acts ever, as John Farrell joins us, the manager of the Boston Red Sox. When the Minnesota Twins released him, John, there wasn't much thought as to what Ortiz could do, but you guys quickly snatched him up, and he has been indispensable for your team.
Yeah, there's no doubt, and I think the day that he came over to Boston, the fortunes of this franchise kind of turned around with obviously 3 World Series championships over the course of a 10-year span, and David certainly in the middle of all of it.
Another out there, so 2 outs here. For David today, what has he been telling you? We know he's such a jovial, sort, gregarious guy. Has he been joking about this final spring training home game?
Yeah, you know what? I don't think today is a whole lot different than any other day that he's spent in this organization. Now, David has a way with the special moments inside of a given career, whether it's gifts presented today or taking a key at bat deep in the postseason. So David's got the flair for the moment and certainly rises to that occasion.
John, what do we expect this season as far as, special presentations like this wherever he goes? Is he the perfect guy to handle these things, do you think?
Yeah, Tim, we were talking about it before the game, and, during BP, you and I were, and I think if there's one person that will handle some of the distraction that might be created by some of these events or ceremonies, David is the one that's, because he's played so many years here in Boston where there can be distractions in many different forms. He's always remained focused, and I think the biggest gift we could give him is to leave not only on positive terms, but going out as a winner.
John, has he promised you some good real estate on David Ortiz's way?
I don't know. I think anytime you're given a sign with your name on it, you've probably done something pretty special in the game.
And John, you talk about how well he has handled all this and how well you think he will be able to handle all this. Talk about that leadership and its vacancy going into next year. And have you seen him? I'm sure it happens every day. I know it happens every day, but how he's imparted this wisdom on some of these younger guys here in the organization.
Yeah, Dallas, I think what you're touching on here is something that David wants to leave behind is not only his legacy, but the impact he's had on his teammates. We can all kind of measure what he's done for the city, for the organization, but he's such a people person and cares so much about the guys in our clubhouse that he wants to give his experience, and that conversation goes on every day in the clubhouse with the way he talks to other hitters or guys in our uniform.
As far as what we're seeing today, John, what's the focus here with Rick Porcello? Rough first inning, he's settled down now, though.
All about elevation in the strike zone. When he's down, he's inducing contact on the ground and able to use that sinker to his advantage.
Indeed. Gets a strikeout here. It's good stuff, John. We could talk to Buck Showalter right before you. It was a longer inning. You got out lucky. Quick 3 outs for you, John.
All right, sounds good. Have a good one.
All right, that's John Farrell, the manager of the Boston Red Sox. As it's 2-1 here right now for Baltimore. Speaking of the American League and predictions and prognostications, let's go back to our Baseball Tonight studio and John Kruk standing by. Krucky with his thoughts on the AL. John?
Well,
Orioles have been underestimated the last 2 seasons. If you go by some projections, in fact, they're only supposed to win 72 games this year. We'll get into the AL predictions in just a second, but first, go to @BBTN, part of hashtag Mock Draft Monday. According to ESPN Fantasy's Player Rater, who was the #1 player in fantasy baseball last season? Tweet your answer with hashtag Mock Draft Monday, and one person who answers correctly will win a seat in a mock draft with Eric Carabell at 2 p.m. Eastern. Dallas Braden as well participating in that. Eric, once again, thumbs up. He's fired up. He's ready to go. So make sure you're a part of the action with him. Fantasy baseball in full swing here on Mock Draft Monday. With Dallas Braden, Tim Kirchin, I'm Matt Namberg as we continue. So, Tim, what do you make of Crocky's predictions there for the AL?
The AL is really, really difficult to read for me. I must tell you, I'm thoroughly confused about the entire league, and I'm not being flip here. It's really hard to read. I think the Blue Jays are the best team in the East, but I can't say that for sure.
Now, that's a good pick, though.
I like the Royals in the Central. I like the Astros in the West. I like the Rangers to win a wild card, and the second wild card is totally up in the air for today. I picked the Red Sox. That's assuming some of these guys come back from injuries and the 2 guys at the corners play really well.
I'm completely with you on the Astros in the West. I like the Rangers as a wild card. I like the Jays prediction. Just to be off the board here, because there's always something unpredictable, maybe the Indians in the Central. These are your predictions here. You see Timmy's list and then Dallas's list. So you guys, Dallas, you're going with the Sox in the East, the Royals in the Central, the Astros in the West. As a wild card, you do have the Blue Jays and the White Sox. So your team that you're picking a little bit off the radar here is the White Sox, who a year ago more people were buying it up.
Absolutely. I think because of the upgrade they've made over at the hot corner with Flava Frage, T. Frage, I think you're going to see some offense going on. I think Chris Sale is going to really take that next step. I mean, he's been lights out, the very definition of a wipeout repertoire. Yep. And I think if he continues on the path that he's on, I'm looking for him to have a Cy Young type of year as well.
But Tim, before you talk, 2 tickets to the gun show here, by the way. As you see from Dallas.
He asked me if I wanted to touch his bicep. I said, no, of course not.
He literally rolled it because you want to touch these? He's like, I think
it's free. No permit necessary, Timmy.
He's got a hat, sunglasses, and a tattoo showing.
Trying to get some color on these spaghetti noodles.
A couple of fans walk by and they go, that can't possibly be Dallas Braden. He's wearing a Fenway South hat. Who is the guy who thinks he's Dallas Braden wearing a headset in the Fenway South?
I thought it was because of the vascularity in my forearms and biceps, but apparently not. It's the hat. Thanks, guys.
We are baking out here a little bit, so you want to take care of that skin. That's true. I was going to say, though, Timmy, in the Central, maybe the Indians. Now, hear me out of this. I know the offense is great, but I love those young strikeout pitchers, Carrasco and Kluber. Brantley is great. I like the magic of Terry Francona. Maybe a second wild card, the Indians out of the Central.
Well, sure, it's a possibility. Terry Francona told me again this spring, the reason we kept all of our young pitching is we have a chance to win every single night because we're going to throw an above-average major league starting pitcher, in some cases way above average, every single night. But offensively, they're going to have to be like almost perfect if they're going to win enough 3-2 games. And I just don't see that happening. But are they in the hunt? Of course they are. That's the point about the American League. How many teams have a shot at one of those wild cards for sure?
Let's pop up those predictions back there again. I want to see what Dallas was thinking out of the West. You had the Astros winning the West just like Timmy?
I had the Astros out of the West. I like Lance McCullers. I like Colin McHugh. Obviously, Dallas Keuchel as well. I think Correa and Altuve and Gomez up the middle are tremendous, tremendous athletes. And I think Correa is going to have that breakout MVP type season, and I think they ride that all the way to the postseason.
Jim Bowden was telling us he thinks already Correa, we had the BBTN 100. He thinks he's already one of the top 10 players of the game. And Crucky's like, hang on a second, he's only played 5 months. Hey, but trust me, he's going to be that guy for Houston this year. So Casey and Houston, talk to me with the Red Sox then, Dallas. You're buying on this team going from last to first again.
I think if Hanley shows up and Pablo shows up and we can get Porcello on the right track and Joe Kelly continues the dominant spring he's had, I don't see any reason why David Price and the rest of that staff and the stopper at the end in Kimbrel can't see themselves at the end of the race finishing first.
A walk here to one of the bottom of third. Dustin Pedroia. Xander Bogaerts stepping up. As Tim mentioned, though, the concerns with Boston though, is the depth of that pitching. You think that Buchholz or Porcello, one of these guys, is going to be a viable number 2?
I think they're going to have to. Let's be honest.
Right.
They don't have anybody after Price as dominant as Price, so they're going to need one of those 3 guys to step up. Buchholz has the stuff. Joe Kelly has the stuff. Porcello has the stuff. They've shown the ability to pitch and get outs. It's about putting it all together and having all three perform at the same time.
And I'll say this about their offense. You know, considering all the concerns, and they're completely valid, about Hanley Ramirez and Pablo Sandoval, they were actually third last year in runs scored. Like, this team scores a ton of runs. Poppy's the only guy in baseball who's driven 100 or more runs the last 3 seasons. Jose Bautista hasn't done that. Mike Trout hasn't done that. So Ortiz is, you can pencil him in for 30, 100, even if it's his final year. And if Pedroia's healthy, as Tim was saying, he's been telling him earlier this year, even if Sandoval and Hanley Ramirez aren't great, because of the guys like Bogarts have emerged, Boston could be pretty good.
And as Dallas said, their bullpen is better. I mean, Craig Kimbrell at the end, my goodness, he throws 100 miles an hour. And they upgraded with Carson Smith, who's got a forearm injury here. But John Farrell told me today that, you know, maybe mid-April he'll be ready to go in a major league game. So it's not as bad as I think we originally thought.
So Carson Smith, your 7th inning guy, Koji Uehara in the 8th inning. They got Kimbrell closing up shop. Tazawa's in the mix as well. So definitely some options there for John Farrell when you get to that bullpen.
And Robbie Ross Jr. from the left side as well. So they definitely have options, and it's about building that bridge to Kimbrell.
Ranis Ilias as well, Tommy Lane. So Boston hoping that they short up that bullpen. They address their weaknesses certainly and try to do what they could. Cannot wait for the games to actually really start to count. Sunday's opening day. We'll have 3 games for you. Starting at 1 Eastern when the Pirates host the Cardinals on ESPN. Then at 4, it's the Jays and Rays at the Trop on ESPN2. And at 8:30 on ESPN, a World Series rematch in prime time. The Mets battle the Royals. All games are also streaming live on Watch ESPN and the ESPN app. These games are part of the 7 opening day games we'll have on ESPN and ESPN2 over the first 2 days of the season, Sunday and Monday. Baseball is back in a big way. As you can see, Bogarts there, the comebacker. He is indeed retired. So after some scoring early in this one, settled down a little bit, 2-1 through 3. Keith Law is going to join us, give his predictions also when it comes to the American League. Stay with us. Sir, we are atop the Little Monster here in Fort Myers, Florida. But as you can see, the Green Monster over the years has seen lots of special moments when it comes to Boston Red Sox history. All so close to so many times. And then this triumphant run from 2003 to 2015, which has culminated in 3 World Series championships in 04, 07, and 2013. Pleasure to have Keith Law joining us here as well. As I mentioned, it's a reasonable facsimile here in Fort Myers at JetBlue Park. It's kind of a mini monster, which makes sense because collectively, Keith, Tim, myself, and Dallas not guys of stature, at least physically. So we're almost mini parts of a baseball team.
Mark Mulder was not invited.
Seriously. Keith, we were just talking with the AL projections here, as that looks to be the first out in the top of the fourth. And some youth certainly could be served when it comes to this Boston Red Sox team. There's a reason why there's so much optimism around guys like Xander Bogaerts and Mookie Betts and Jackie Bradley Jr.
Oh, yeah, they've done a great job really going back about 10, 12 years now, turning an organization that had not had great success in terms of scouting and player development, but becoming, in the words of Theo Epstein, a well-oiled player development machine. And even after his regime left, they've still managed to do that, especially now they've become one of the more formidable clubs scouting internationally, with names like Yohan Moncada, who I think most people have heard, Xander Bogaerts is also through that international program, Rafael Devers, and I just watched Anderson Espinoza, the 18-year-old Dominican, throw out on the backfields before joining you guys. 18, he's 92, 97 already, easy, good curveball, feel for a changeup, pitches like a 22-year-old. And when you keep finding guys like that, it's easy to have the assets you need to trade for Major League help.
Keith, I saw Moncada play a couple weeks ago in Bradenton. Is he a second baseman for you?
I've got my doubts. He is a very big guy for second base, big for anywhere in the infield, really. And I don't like the way he feels. He's very upright. Typically, an infielder is a little more flexible, gets down, crouches, bends his knees a little more, his back is more flexible. I don't know if he stays at second base. I do feel like if he has to move to left or right field, though, he'll have plenty of bat for that, because, as I'm sure you saw, he's really strong.
He's really big.
And he can hit. He's got a good idea at the plate. So it's going to play somewhere. It just may not end up being on the dirt.
Mookie Betts is a guy we were talking to earlier, Keith, not having had the pleasure of talking to him before. Funny guy, engaging. He's a big bowler. He's bowled 300 a couple of times.
Yeah.
Mom delivered him, then went back to the bowling alley, finished up her round.
Yes.
As far as his baseball prowess is concerned, what do you see from him?
Well, it's funny. I talked to the scout Danny Watkins, who originally scouted and signed him out of high school. And he was really just an unbelievable athlete with great instincts for the game. And that was what really set him apart from other high school players in that class. And what's happened since he got in the Pro Bowl, though, he's advanced really quickly, especially for a fifth-round pick, because he's had those good instincts, because he's got that understanding of the game, and that allowed him to advance even more quickly than the athletic tools would have indicated.
Question I have about Jackie Bradley Jr., and I know he's the numbers you can give me, how spectacular he is defensively. Do you think he's going to hit enough at the major league level that it's not a concern in center field?
I've always thought he would hit and get on base, but not have a lot of power. Every time I've seen him try to sell out a little bit to drive the ball to hit for power, it's cost him contact and then thus the ability to get on base. It's like it's two different hitters, and he has to choose which one he wants to be. And I'd rather see him be the guy
250, 260
with some walks, maybe even a little more than that. With some walks to get on base, use the whole field. A lot of line drives, go the other way, especially when you're behind in the count. I've seen him do it. But then he gets into these stretches where it's, you know what, I want to be a power hitter. I'm going to drive the ball. And then when he does that, he loses that ability to go to the opposite field.
Outstanding move. Quick feet. There's outs to be had on the field, not just at the plate. Great job by Porcello. Finds himself in a little bit of a sticky situation. Ball in hand. Handley, a little bit of athleticism on display as well. Good job looking for the out.
Dallas Bray, one of the great pickoff moves of all time. He knows what he speaks. Welcome back to Spring Training Baseball on ESPN, presented by Head and Shoulders. We are at JetBlue Park at Fenway South as David Ortiz is celebrating his final spring training home game today here in Fort Myers, Florida. And John Farrell, the manager of the Red Sox, joining us earlier, saying that Poppy's not approaching any differently than he would any other game. He did get honored with David Ortiz Way, a sign before. He did his own street now, got a couple of seats as well. So it'll be part of a ceremonial tour this year. And reading a little bit about just kind of his trajectory, Timmy, it's interesting that Terry Ryan, as Ortiz lifts that ball, he'll be retired there, right. Terry Ryan, the general manager of the Twins, Tim, he said that when he made that move to release him, they knew that Ortiz had some power, but this wasn't about thinking that Ortiz could be productive. It was a little bit of salary, a little bit of a misjudgment. And he goes, clearly I was wrong on it. We all know that. But nobody could have seen the second act coming.
No. And it was a misjudgment, and there was money involved, as Terry said. But I know when he signed with the Red Sox, no one thought, hey, we got our DH for the next 15 years here. He just found something else here, and he caught on pretty quickly. But he did hit a bunch of home runs in Minnesota. It wasn't like he hit 4 homers a year there. He had some power coming over here. It just really came out when he got to Fenway.
Well, and you think it wasn't like there were 12 clubs trying to sign this guy either.
Right.
He got a fairly low base salary contract with the Red Sox. He was a DH. Everybody knew he was a DH, and a lot of other clubs said we already have a DH. We'd rather not lock that up with one guy. We've got a prospect who we might need that spot somewhere. We were in that situation with Toronto. We had Josh Phelps, who just had a great half season as a rookie, and we thought, well, is there really going to be that much of a difference between Ortiz is better? No one thought he'd be this much better.
Yeah, he signed a 1-year, $1.25 million deal. Clearly, he's made a lot more after that. Hanley Ramirez there at base at the center, but let's go to a live look-in right now. Garrett Cole is pitching for the Pittsburgh Pirates. I know, listen to Keith, the rest of you guys up front, he talked about Cole potentially could win a Cy Young. He's certainly upset with the Pirates management, the way his contract's undergoing. So let's take a look at what's happening with regards to Cole and the Pirates, as we'll see what's going on here.
First pick and the second choice overall.
Byron Buxton right now is up. It's funny, they always ask us as ESPN experts, predict the rookie of the year, etc. Keith, I just went safe. I said, all right, let me just go ahead and go with Buxton.
Oh, yeah.
But I know that he struggled a little bit coming up the major league level, but what did you see from Buxton last year?
I was a huge fan, even going into last season. I didn't know if he'd necessarily be rookie of the year candidate because it wasn't clear how much he'd get to play right out of the chute. Now this year, we know he's got the job. We know he can play defense. We know he can really run. Big question for him is he going to make enough contact? And that was a problem for him in the second half of last season. He was not an advanced hitter coming out of a very rural Georgia high school and has had to make a lot of adjustments as he's moved up the ladder. Really, every spot he's gone to, there's been an adjustment period for him in getting used to a better quality of pitching, especially when you get to the upper minors, Dallas. That's where you face the pitchers who can locate their off-speed stuff. And for a lot of hitters, it's a big separator.
You see there's a little bit of swing and miss in his game, but there's been strong comparisons drawn to Andre Dawson and his ability to cover ground in the outfield, his athleticism. So I'm with you, Adnan. I think that probably is the safe bet. And I think you're right, Keith. His ability to adjust or at least notice the need to make those adjustments at every level, I think that speaks to his character and maybe his work ethic, that he's not going to be easily deterred when failure creeps in. He's going to find a way to adjust and get himself better and right himself and allow him to continue to progress.
Keith, is there a body type with Buxton that reminds you? I mean, to me, Eric Davis comes to mind. Is that what most of the scouts are saying?
First time I walked in and saw him in high school, I went to Baxley, Georgia. Town so small, there's a McDonald's. That's about it. And I walk in and he's in his cut-off T-shirt and shorts. It's like, oh my God, I'm looking at 18-year-old Eric Davis. I can't imagine. And then you watch him run. And that game he played that night, too, it was against their rival high school, and it was actually a good game. He started on the mound. He was up to 95, finished the game in center field. The bottom of the 7th inning, he led off. They were down by 1. He manufactured the tying run just with his speed. He was that type of player in high school where everything that happened on the field somehow involved him, and he had the ability to change the entire game.
We saw Keith Law's top 10 prospects going into the season. Obviously, lots of conversation around Seager for the Dodgers as we flash it up here once again. Buxton, we've been discussing. Julio Urias here with the Dodgers could be a guy as well, Keith, that the Dodgers consider the concerns around their pitching. At what point could we see him in Los Angeles?
Well, there's two possibilities. One is they send him back to AAA where he struggled last year, keep him as a starter and try to bring him up June, July timeframe for half a season. It's also possible they could start him in the big leagues as a reliever because they want to keep his innings total down anyway. And maybe use him as a long reliever for the early part of the season, try to get him acclimated. Maybe he makes some spot starts too. They've talked about maybe doing some tandem system where he and Jose De Leon take over some of the innings because they're really running out of starters at this point. Someone like Ross Stripling, who was not even in their top 10 prospects coming into the season, could be their 5th starter almost by default because everyone else who they were considering has gotten hurt.
Also curious for the name Trey Turner. I'm here with the Washington Nationals. Ooh, what does he project as?
He can really fly. He's you don't see a lot of American-born shortstops of that style anymore because he can, like I say, he's a plus runner. He's very agile. He's got good actions around the position. He's kind of a light hitter, a lot of contact, not a lot of power. But really, if you can play the position defensively, then you don't have to hit a lot at this point. And I do think if he even gets on base at a 340, 350 clip, which is not unreasonable for him, he's going to steal 50 bases at a very high rate, and he's going to give them a lot of options to do things to try to manufacture more runs, which, like it or not, that is something Dusty Baker does like to do.
Right. A couple weeks ago, I was in there. Danny Espinosa was their shortstop when I went there, and Trey Turner was going to go to the minor leagues and figure it out there because he just wasn't comfortable being the everyday guy in spring training. Now, that could change. They've got a week to figure this out. He is their shortstop of the future, but opening day, it may not be him. They may give him a little more time at AAA.
Did you get to see Giolito pitch while you were in Nats camp?
I did, and I talked to Bob Boone about him, and it was interesting with the whole thing about spin rate and all these sabermetric numbers, which are so interesting. Don Mattingly said something to the effect of, I don't need to know the spin rate to know that nobody can hit that curveball that Giolito throws. So it takes a veteran eye to see that curveball is something really special.
Yep. And Giolito right now is one of your top 5 prospects, right?
Yeah, he is the top pitching prospect for me in all of baseball. Wow. And they have no need for him in the major league rotation right now, and they'd be rushing him slightly. But I think if they had to send him out as the 5th starter, if they were in a Dodgers type situation, he could handle it. He's got the above-average fastball. He's got the plus curveball, 4 and 2 seamer, feel for a changeup, throws strikes. It's more little stuff. Command, setting up hitters. He's really just gotten a Double-A, and he's a really bright kid. You know, you've got to keep facing better quality hitters as you move up and learn. They make adjustments to you. You have to make adjustments in return.
And that Dodgers situation to me is interesting because you go from losing Zach Greinke and Brandon McCarthy's injured and Brent Anderson's injured, and you've still got a $243 million payroll. And I hear about Orioles, and I say, okay, well, how long are you going to wait here?
They have 3 starters.
Right. They've got some issues there, but to piggyback on Keith's point here, Urias was, they asked, would you trade him even up for David Price when he was going to, and they said, no, we're not trading him for David Price. This is when they needed another starter, and David Price, in theory, might have brought them even more in the playoffs, and they said, we're not trading this kid. That's how high they are on him.
He was already pitching in low A at 16. I'm not sure we've seen anybody do that. I remember Doc Gooden being in the Carolina League. I think he was 8. He threw about 300 innings back then, too. It was a different era. But what Urias did, I can't think of that. Any pitcher born anywhere who was pitching in a full season league at 16.
I think Dallas Braden may have come close.
I didn't have a driver's license.
Do you have one now?
Got one now.
God, they'll give those to anybody.
Dallas does like to hitchhike once in a while, though, just to kind of keep it real with the peeps. This ball popped up here, and say this for Mike Wright. As he was struggling early on, but now he's stopped down a little bit. So it's 2-1 right now for the Baltimore Orioles going through 4. Wright is going for that number 5 spot. Gordon Eads, VSBNBoston.com, coming up next.
Every human being knows that athletes, we have that short period of life living in sport.
Ortiz sends this one high in the air, way back. First major league home run for David Ortiz.
What you're doing right now, you can do it until you turn 80. You know, as an athlete, you know, a 20-year career, not everybody get to that point. Well, better way to say it, you know, our career is short. So everybody, every athlete face this moment. Not everyone get the opportunity to say goodbye.
There's a drive to right field deep. Way back it goes. Number 500, David Ortiz.
In my case, you know, I probably can still play another year, but I just feel like I have a lot of responsibility on my shoulder that goes along with what I do, and I like to be 100% ready to do it, to get it done. And as you get older, it doesn't work that way, you know what I'm saying? And in this case, you know, I'm going to try to walk out of that field my last game proud and happy that I send that positive message to a lot of young people out there.
David Ortiz's final spring training home game. Certainly going to be a special moment here at Fort Myers, Florida, coming up in the 6th inning. Adnan Burke alongside Tim Kirkjian and Dallas Braden. Keith Thought will be with us momentarily, but joining us now is Gordon Eats of ESPNBoston.com. All right, Gordon.
I'm doing great, and great for you guys to show up for the first stage of Poppy Palooza. I guess we'll be getting this all over the country in the next 6 months.
Poppy Palooza, which you'll be all over. It's interesting. There's so many memories coming up, so many stories about it. And a guy like you who's been a part of it day in, day out for so many years, what do you think of when you think of the fact this is going to be David Ortiz's final season?
Yeah, and you know, guys, since I am now officially the, quote, Red Sox historian, I got to establish my bona fides by mentioning that David has a chance this season to do something that's only been done once before in World Series history. Only one Red Sox player has won 4 World Series, and that was Harry Hooper, the outfielder, one of your favorite guys.
Absolutely.
In the teens. Yeah,
he got his card. Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, for me, I've seen every season David has played here, and it's hard for me not to recall that when they first signed him in 2003, I remember having a conversation with Theo Epstein in spring training. This guy's going to get a couple hundred at bats. You know, he's going to be in that rotation at first base and designated hitter. Well, it worked out. I mean, remember, that's the year that they went to great lengths to bring back Kevin Millar from Japan. He had signed that contract with the Chunichi Dragons, and you know, David was just a guy. That changed very rapidly in 2003. And you know, I think, and I laugh, the owners, John Henry, Tom Warner, and at the time Larry Lucchino, presented David a plaque that said, greatest clutch hitter in Red Sox history. Fellas, that was in 2005. Think about all the things he accomplished after that.
To your point, Gordon, I went back looking at some of those numbers. In that 2013 World Series against the Cardinals, David Ortiz hit .688, and his slugging percentage was over 1,000. Like, it was ridiculous numbers he's put up. In 14 World Series games, he's hit .455. Clutch hitting, Tim, is something that's not quantifiable, but David Ortiz has it. He has been one of the great clutch hitters we have seen in the game.
Yeah.
I think it is quantifiable when you look at him. Look at those numbers in his career. And this is why he's a Hall of Famer for me. He's the greatest DH ever. He's got over 500 homers. Slugging percentage is really high. And he's got the postseason that very, very few guys have ever had. So he's a first ballot Hall of Famer for me.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how that breaks, Tim, because there has been so much resistance to putting a designated hitter in the Hall of Fame. You know, Frank Thomas, of course, he's a guy who also played some first base. But when you consider the impact that Ortiz has had on this club, and when you think of it relative to maybe unquestionably the greatest hitter in Red Sox history, maybe baseball history, Ted Williams, David's regular season stats don't compare to Ted's. I mean, who's due? You know, I mean,
Babe Ruth, that's it.
That's it, yeah. I mean, and it's 75 years this year that Ted hit .406, the last guy to hit over 400.
41.
But what separates David, and you can make an argument that places him among the very top echelon of Red Sox players, is the postseason record. Ted only got to play in one World Series, 1946. He did not play well. In all singles, 1 RBI, and there were extenuating circumstances. They played Brooklyn and the Cardinals tied for the National League pennant that year. So the Red Sox had some time before the World Series began, and it wasn't unusual for owners to schedule exhibition games. So Tom Yawkey scheduled an exhibition game at Fenway Park. Joe DiMaggio played in the game. Got his Yankee uniform back in New York. It's the only time he ever wore a Red Sox uniform. I learned that from Robert Weinraub's book called The Victory Season. I'd never known that.
That's pretty cool.
And so Ted plays in that game, and there was a lefty from the Washington Senators named Mickey Hefner. And in the 3rd inning, he hits Williams in the elbow with a pitch. He said it was so cold he couldn't get a grip on his curveball. So Ted's elbow balloons up. He spends the rest of the day in the whirlpool. On top of that, and when you think about it, it's crazy in hindsight. He was dealing with all this speculation that the Red Sox were going to trade him after the season. I mean, they were either going to trade him to Detroit for Hal Newhouser, trade him to the Yankees for DiMaggio. I mean, it got to the point where Tom Yawkey, the owner, had to come out and say, hey, look, we're not going to trade him. But, you know, Ted was burdened by a lot of things going into that series. And the Red Sox, it's funny because we think of them going 86 years without winning. Well, when they came into that 46 series, they had a 5-series winning streak going into that, and they were heavy favorites, and then they lost. So that's been the black mark on Ted Williams' career, that he didn't get it done in the postseason. And we know there's been a lot of great players who've had poor postseason. And
small sample size, as they like to say,
very small sample size. But David, you know, I mean, I think if the home run, maybe the single most electric moment for me, and I know a lot of people like to talk about the 2004 ALCS when David won 2 games in basically 1 calendar day.
Game 4 and Game 5.
Correct.
Rather than the single.
Exactly. But it's hard for me to get past Game 2 ALCS 2013. 5-1 Detroit lead. They've got Verlander poised to pitch Game 3 back in Detroit. Joaquin Benoit on the hill. Jimmy Leland had told his pitchers, it was really something you don't have to tell your pitchers, the one guy in the Boston lineup, you know, let beat you, David Ortiz. And what does he do? Launches one beyond Torrey Hunter's heroic attempt, falling into the bullpen.
And the Red Sox were down 0-1 at that time. They lose, it's 0-2.
And Verlander waiting for him. So
good stuff from Gordon Eads, our Red Sox historian. As it's 2-1 right now, Baltimore. Special tribute coming from David Ortiz next inning. Good stuff, Gordon. We'll talk to you next. Spring training baseball is live at the MLB.com at BAT app. Stay connected all spring with radio broadcasts, video highlights, stats, news, and more. Download MLB.com at BAT, the #1 app for live baseball on your smartphone and tablet. Our thanks to Gordon Eves, the Red Sox historian. You can read his great stuff on ESPNBoston.com. So welcome back in Keith Law. Here the final home spring training game for David Ortiz, one of many celebrations he's going to have. Just to continue that talk we were having, Tim, and I want to get Keith and Dallas's thoughts in on this as well. You talk with the great Red Sox of all time, and certainly Tim Williams comes up as first and foremost, perhaps the greatest of all time. And then you think Pedro Martinez, you think about some of the other names that kind of Carl Yastrzemski certainly. Where do you have Ortiz, the great Red Sox of all time?
This is really difficult, by the way, but I have Ted first, Yastrzemski second because of the time spent there and the defense, which separates him from David Ortiz. I have David Ortiz third, and I have Pedro Martinez fourth. Now that's leaving out Wayne Barnes, Carlton Fisk, Roger Clemens, Lefty Grove, Jimmy Fox, Cy Young. There are so many, but so many of those Red Sox spent time with another team. And Ortiz has spent the majority of his career with the Red Sox. And of course, Yastrzemski and Williams were a lifetime Red Sox. So that's my top four for the Red Sox. And it is debatable. Dwight Evans, Jim Rice, many others.
Dwight Evans is constantly underrated.
Right. It's a really difficult choice because to not include Lefty Grove or Roger Clemens, these guys who were just spectacular.
Lefty Grove was #1, your greatest lefties of all time, right?
He is, yes, for me at least. But Pedro's my fourth just because he won a couple of Cy Youngs there. And 99-2000 are the two greatest seasons back-to-back that I've ever seen. I know that. And I think baseball history could look at those 2 years and, given the offensive climate at the time, and call those two of the greatest back-to-back seasons by one pitcher ever.
Never want to disagree with the great Tim Kirchner. Keith Law, you're forcing?
I would probably have had Pedro over Ortiz.
Yaz and Ted are the no-brainers. Right?
Yeah.
Those are
and Jimmy Fox must have a pretty good, without having the numbers in front of me, he must have a pretty good case.
Yeah, there were so many guys who had a really good case on this, and this is why it's at least a dozen guys who you could consider to be in the big four for them.
Do you give more credit to the modern player? Because the reality is, if you could time travel Jimmy Fox forward, he's not going to perform like this. Players today are bigger, better, faster, stronger. It's just a completely different game today.
Right, but I think Ted Williams would have been just as good a hitter today as he was in the 40s. Now, I'm in the complete minority on this, but I really believe that our greatest and biggest and best players transcend all eras here. I really believe Lou Gehrig would have been a star in today's game. Babe Ruth would be a star in today's game. And Curt Schilling told me that Babe Ruth is Matt Stairs. And if that's true, then again, I've wasted 35 years covering baseball because I totally disagree on that.
Kurt's usually so understated too.
But I'm in the big minority on this. There's no question players are bigger, faster, stronger than ever. There's no doubt about that. But this being the ultimate skill sport, I am sure that if Jimmy Fox showed up today and got a little bit of a piece of what Major League Baseball is about, he would start opening day at first base for the Red Sox. I believe that, and most people don't.
I don't think it's that the burrito is anti-Babe Ruth. He's just really pro-Matt Stairs. He really thinks that Matt Stairs hasn't received his due.
I think he's really anti-Tim Kirchner. I think that's it. I think he just knows how to get me upset, and he does it really well.
He does the stance every time when he talks with Ty Cobbs. The fact he didn't have his hands together on the bat. That somehow implies the fact he wasn't a real hitter.
Well, he thinks Rogers Hornsby had the split grip also, which he didn't. Sorry.
Details.
Never let it get in the way of a good story. 2-1 here in the bottom of the fifth. Dallas, did you face Ortiz? How many times did you face? Do we have numbers on that?
I thought you were going to ask him if he faced Jimmy Fox.
Yeah, I didn't see many of
that was Rick Sutcliffe. That's right.
I didn't see many of those games, but just from personal experience, having faced the Red Sox throughout my career, Poppy was definitely one of the guys that you can feel in the batter's box. And I mean, you feel his presence, you feel his approach, and then obviously watching Pedro growing up. And I had the red
Rawlings, the red Pedro at Texas Tech. All left-handed, sure, but I wanted every bit of what Pedro was putting down out there. The attitude, the approach. I mean, the stuff. I couldn't have his stuff if he gave me 15 years to try to, have help or whatever. I would never have his stuff. But just seeing him go out and compete and really take over a ball game every fifth day, for me, that impact in that uniform and having seen him get the championship, I mean, those two are absolutely on the list for me.
Third out here made in the bottom of the fifth as Mike Wright has settled down. As the Baltimore Orioles have the lead, as David Ortiz will have a special celebration for him after his third at bat here in Fort Myers. Andy Ramirez pregame showing off some love here for Poppy as well. Apparently, everybody can do a Poppy imitation, right? A little bit idiosyncratic with the bat, the waggle, the spit in the gloves. Hanley's got it pretty much down. Lots of fun here being had at Jeff Blue Park in Fenway. So watch it go. Look at that home run trot.
I think we got a good core of 10 to 12 guys that have been here for 4 to 5 years. For that to change, me personally, I don't like change. I like to stick with our guys and let's go with these guys. No matter where you go, you're going to get paid. But these are guys that want to play here, want to wear black and orange, and want to do something for the city.
And just on cue, I was about to say, if the Baltimore Orioles are going to have success this season, they're going to have to hit a lot of long balls as they tied the game here against Rick Porcello in the 6th. You were mentioning off the top, Tim, we could see something really cool here for the Orioles. They could have the most home runs ever. They could have the most strikeouts ever, too.
Right, with Mark Trumbo and Pedro Alvarez and Chris Davis to go with some other guys on the team that strike out a few times. You know, the Cubs' record of 1578 from last year is in jeopardy. But the Mariners in '97 hit 264 homers, and that's in jeopardy also. Let's not forget this is a small ballpark, and Alvarez can really pull the ball, which is easy down the right field line there. Trumbo hit some rocket shots to left center where the ball really carries, and Manny Machado hit 35 homers last year, and no one has more homers the last 3 years than Chris Davis.
Those numbers that Tim were referring to, the 97 Mariners and just last year's Chicago Cubs team, lots of swings and misses. Well, they did win 97 games. It clearly didn't really affect them as far as winning games. Keith, what do you make of this Baltimore team? They're really so reliant on the home run. They were 12th in OBP, which is the number that stood to me. I'm all in favor of hitting all those home runs. You got to have some more people on base.
There's got to be someone on base, right? Solo home runs are not that great. And the Orioles, I don't like the way they've built their offense because it's going to be a low OBP team. Everyone they're bringing in, these are more low OBP guys. This is not going to help. Alvarez, low OBP guy, doesn't hit lefties. Trumbo, low OBP guy forever. His entire career, he's a sub-300 OBP guy. So they haven't addressed any of the critical problems with the club. And to add to that, they're not really getting much help from the farm system. The system has been plagued by injuries, by major developmental problems up and down the system where they can't keep pitchers healthy and they can't develop them. So they're not getting the help in the rotation they need either.
That rotation, Chris Tillman was supposed to be the ace Dallas. He had a 4.99 ERA a year ago. Miguel Gonzalez has had a bad spring. To me, the guy is Gausman. If he can get back to being what he thought was a blue chipper, but arm issues as well for him.
Absolutely. He's a guy, upper 90s fastball, tremendous slider, great changeup as well. This is a guy that they're going to rely on heavily at the back end of this rotation until he can sort of solidify himself as the frontline guy they hope he grows into. Tillman, they're looking to have a bounce back year. Obviously, he's going to be their opening day starter. But there are some question marks around a guy like Ubaldo Jimenez. How effective can he be? How consistent can he be? And Giovanni Gallardo coming over, going to look for him to head that staff. But you also have to be able to score runs to give these guys an opportunity to stifle the other team.
That ball driven here deep to left, and that is gone. So right on cue, the Orioles showing off that power. And that is Pena going deep. Francisco Pena, who is catching today, as he's showing what Matt Wieters and Caleb Joseph will be doing once the actual games begin next week. 4-1 Orioles here in the top of the sixth. Rick Porcello was cruising until a couple of home runs here.
Well, he's been up in the zone, and you heard John Farrell talk about it earlier. They want him to be the guy who's got that fastball down in the zone. You see here, this two-seamer just runs right over the heart of the plate, and it sank right on to the barrel.
You know, and back to the young pitching in this organization. Dylan Bundy was, a scout told me he had him at 96 the other day. Dylan Bundy's not a big guy, but he was a top prospect before he got hurt. Hunter Harvey's there. So, Keith, when you think about Gausman, Bundy, and Harvey going forward, is that something with health that could be a really good rotation?
The problem is with health. Bundy has calcification in the back of his shoulder. It's not clear he'll ever be able to handle a significant workload. Hunter Harvey missed all of last year due to multiple injuries after he came over to pitch on the major league side and seemed to have overextended himself. And Gausman, that's the one that frustrates me the most because I thought he did have #1 starter upside. But Buck Showalter and the Major League coaching staff decided to change him to the other side of the rubber. He started throwing across his body to try to create more deception. He has not been the same pitcher since, and I would definitely draw a line between that and the shoulder problem that he's experiencing now that's going to start him on the season, on the DL, or when the season begins. So yes, it would be great pitching depth, but all three of those guys have injury questions that make me wonder if they can be significant contributors this year.
Bundy's the one, Keith. And I remember reading your stuff about him, and scouts were drooling about him a few years ago.
He's one of the best high school pitchers I've ever seen. In fact, the last time I saw him as an amateur, he threw a 7-inning, 1-hitter, faced the minimum number of batters, 21, punched out 18. The only guy to reach base bunted for a hit, and 2 pitches later, the catcher picked him off.
Think about that. He struck out 18 of 21 guys.
Yeah, I saw him pitch in a simulated game a few years ago before he got hurt. It was the first simulated game he ever pitched in Major League camp. And he struck out Mark Reynolds with an overhand curveball. And Reynolds just walked back to the dugout shaking his head and just mouthed the word, wow, like that. That was Dylan Bundy at his best because he was 97 there with that overhand curveball. It was pretty impressive.
He threw a cutter in high school that was more like a slider. It was bigger than a typical cutter. And you don't see many high school pitchers who throw cutters at all. And the Orioles have really discouraged him from using it. And I don't think that has anything to do with him getting hurt. But I do think he would be or would have been more effective if he'd been able to keep that because it was his best pitch.
Rick Porcello rings up another strikeout despite a couple of solo home runs disallowed. David Ortiz's final at bat for a spring training home game for the Boston Red Sox, and a special celebration to ensue after that. It's coming up next right here on ESPN. ESPN Fantasy Baseball is back, and it's free. Go to ESPN.com/fantasybaseball or download the brand new app to sign up today. Dallas Braden is a part of hashtag Mock Draft Monday, presented by LG. I love what you got at the top of the league. Edwin Encarnacion, Josh Donaldson. JD's one of your guys.
That's my boy. Got the boppers, Edwin, and his parrot in tow. We're doing it. You see the power arms I like. The price is always right. The Dark Knight shall rise and continue to rise. Jay up. I got Kinley as a stopper. The Machine, the Revival, and
I
Albert.
don't know about the Machine Revival. I don't know about Albert. I was with you up until. I like Albert Pujols, but I don't know. Ben Zobrist, you liking him in Chicago?
Ben Zobrist, absolutely.
Cole Hamels, full year in Texas. All right.
Well, who's the parrot? Sorry, I missed that.
Edwin Encarnacion.
Edwin and his parrot.
Oh, okay.
Oh, flat down.
No, that's it.
I didn't understand a word Dallas just said in naming his whole team.
None of us do.
Right.
Just nod your head.
It did sound a little like Edwin and his parents. I'm like, what's happening? By the way, if full disclosure, Pujols was an auto pick because you were asleep at the wheel, so you didn't make that selection. So
true, but now he's all in.
Yeah, exactly.
That's Dallas. Right? That's my guy.
Right, exactly.
That Dallas just speaks a different language. What is who do you call Elton John, Tiny Dancer? What is that one?
That's the knuckleball. It's the name for the knuckleball. You know,
right. The Tiny Dancer, right?
AKA Elton John.
And you figured that out on your own, didn't you?
Story.
From one great Elton John to another, David Ortiz. Final spring training coming back. Take a listen. A nice ovation here for David Ortiz. It got the 34 up the base paths, and certainly a nice presentation before the game honoring Ortiz. David Ortiz way. He's got a couple of seats. How cool would it be to see him go deep one more time?
I don't think Tyler Wilson thinks that would be cool.
Yeah, not everybody would be unanimous in thinking such, but most of the fans here at JetBlue Park, Fenway South, Fort Myers are hoping so.
Not like it matters completely at the moment, but Tyler Wilson is trying to be the fifth starter on the Orioles. So there's added pressure here. He's facing David Ortiz, and he's trying to win a job in the rotation.
Tim, don't take away from the drama of David Ortiz, please. This is the quietest we've been all game. It's like somebody just go, you know what? You clowns, stop talking. just watch the Ortiz at bat.
It's the solemnity of the moment.
Isn't that what Vin Scully does? Just let the moment overwhelm you?
Exactly. Pretty amazing, Keith, what he put up a season ago. After a slow start, people at the end of Poppy, another 30 home run, 100 RBI season. I was pretty amazed that he's the only guy in baseball, 100 or more, he's driven it in 3 straight years.
About 3 years ago or so, it looked like he was toast. He had a good half season or so where people just thought it was over. Bat speed seemed to be gone, and the numbers were bearing it out. And then he's had this renaissance these last 3 years.
Unfortunately for the Fenway faithful here, Ortiz does strike out. His final at bat, but now the fun is going to begin momentarily as they're going to have a special presentation here for David Ortiz at the end of the inning. So we'll get to that in just a second. But since you're all with the fantasy team and making projections here, Dallas, do you think you can pencil in Ortiz another 30 home run, 100 RBI season?
I don't see any reason why you can't. He's been the model of consistency minus the year that we just spoke about. And you think a guy like that's going to be able to answer the bell day in and day out. He's got some fine tools around him and Hanley and Pablo. So I think it's a safe bet to go ahead and pencil him in for another final year of production.
When it comes to production, the question is going to be what Hanley Ramirez is going to be putting up as well with this Boston lineup, and that's another concern. Tim, what have you heard about his transition to first base?
Well, it's gone really well so far, given how poorly. This is why it's gone really well, because he hits a ball like this.
An absolute no doubter of the mini monster. Just a little bit down from where we're set up. And in fact, not out, and he's thrown out at second. Oh, man. But they're going to have a home run. Instead, he gets thrown out at second base. The agony and the ecstasy. The Boston Red Sox. But now the emotion is really going to go to another level. A special presentation here for David Ortiz as we are going to keep it here Dallas is even saluting at attention. We're taking, oh my goodness, coming out in the cart. Louis Tiant is in the cart, I've been told, Tim.
Well, that's the greatest Cuban pitcher maybe ever, and one of the great Red Sox pitchers. So it seems fitting that a great pitcher may go pick up David Ortiz here, perhaps. Sure.
Speaking of a great slugger, Jim Rice is all over there as well. So we've got Hall of Fame presence here. As Tim said earlier, he thinks David Ortiz is the first BAL Hall of Famer, which would be something new when it comes to DHs in the Hall of Fame. But yeah, Jim Rice here on hand in Fort Myers, Florida, just to give Poppy a little bit of love. And as the crowd here saluting David Ortiz one final time. When it comes to spring training home games, he's going to take a ride with Jim Rice and Louis Tiant. How cool is that, Dallas?
You got to love it. History together. Just drink it in. It always goes down smooth.
Is it a light beer?
Oh, the crowd's loving it. One last tour of the bases for David Ortiz. Big Poppy. By the way, the car is moving fast, Tim. I thought it would be like more of a ceremonial drive.
This isn't exactly Cal Ripken run around after 2-1-3-1.
Yes.
A little faster.
2-1-3-1. One of the great moments ever. But clearly Ortiz is saying, all right, enough with the pomp and circumstance. Right. I've got somewhere to be, so let's get going. It's been fun. One last drive around the bases. A pretty cool moment there for David Ortiz along with Louis Tiant and Jim Rice, as you see Dallas Brave right now.
That's how you do that, by the way.
Just get in, get out.
Just do it. Right.
That's true.
Don't drag it out. Don't delay the game for 15 minutes.
Right.
Honor the guy. By all means,
right.
Honor the player.
Of course.
I'm a fan of that, though.
Right. No need to have a big drawn-out ceremony. We did that before the game. Got a couple of classy superstars in the past.
Love it.
We honor the past. We honor the present.
Sure, I know we make light of it, but there's a lot of these fans who aren't able to make it out to Boston and pay their respects to him during the season. So I think it does benefit the fans as well.
That's the beauty of spring training. You get to, either it's more affordable, you get closer.
Well, it's a family environment, and how many kids have grown up to stories about Poppy, and they get to see him maybe for the first time and potentially the last time.
Yep.
Tim was so overwhelmed by the moment, he actually had to leave us now. He had to kind of gather himself. He just needed a moment.
He just does that thing like he twitches his nose, right? And he disappears.
He said it was sunscreen. I'm not buying it.
Yeah. Something got in my eye. Kirkchin, why are you weeping right now? Didn't want to do it uncontrollably on ESPN airwaves, so we've dismissed him. In all seriousness, he is going down to try and get an interview with David Ortiz, so that'll be hopefully something coming up momentarily, and get David's final reflections and thoughts. Listen, mentally, Dallas, this is going to be interesting, because for every guy, I don't care who you are, it's human to say, okay, this is my last time playing at Safeco. This is my last time playing at the Big A. And if the Red Sox believe that they are going to be a contender this season, Ortiz, they're going to need him to be really focused on his production and not necessarily on the fact it's his farewell tour.
Yeah, it absolutely can be a distraction. Obviously, we've kind of seen how these things going to go with Derek Jeter and his tour around the league as well. And you're absolutely right, Adnan. It can detract from what a guy is trying to do out on the field day in and day out. This is a marathon, not a sprint. So anytime you're going to call timeout during that marathon, it can sort of set you back or throw you that curveball, if you will. But Poppy, as we've seen throughout his entire career, has been able to make the adjustment.
Yeah, I can just imagine the guy's trying to focus on what's at stake, Keith, and he's just getting peppered with these questions about his final homestand. And it's like, listen, let's just focus on the game and get this done. Join Major League Baseball in the 30 clubs as we celebrate opening day. Show your team pride by wearing your favorite cap on April 4th and share on social using hashtag #CapsOn for a chance to win prizes. Tune into all the opening day action April 4th on ESPN.
Yeah, I think what we've seen the last couple of times, though, that a player's done one of these farewell tours, well, especially with Jeter, we knew he wasn't one of the most productive players on the Yankees at that point.
No doubt.
Whereas Ortiz, it's a little bit of a different situation. He was really productive last year. He's expected to be really productive this year. He's a pretty big part of their hopes for contention this year. So if that were to detract in any way from his performance, it could really affect the club. Whereas, like I said, in Jeter's case, well, Mariano is just totally unfazable, right?
Right.
Yeah. So whereas in Jeter's case, on the other hand, you knew he was on the downside of his career. He was not the productive player he'd been 5 years ago.
Sox trying to turn two here, but the Orioles break that up. You know, and it's interesting when you look at Ortiz's career. Won't be doing a lot of this year on Baseball Titan, encompassing all of it. But
is it like a captain's log?
I don't know if we can come up with an official term yet. Captain, we may bring back the captain's log.
Poppy's log.
Poppy's log.
All right.
You know why you got the name Poppy, right?
Tell me.
He calls everybody Poppy. Sure. So then Jerry Remy one day, the Red Sox broadcaster, goes, "I'm just going to start calling you Big Poppy. Will that be okay?" And they ran with it.
That's great.
So that is how it happened. He calls everyone Poppy. He became Big Poppy. So if you start calling everybody Dude, all of a sudden Dallas will become the Big Dude.
Big Dude. I don't know.
Then you'll be the Big Lebowski.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I don't see that happening.
Second Lebowski mentioned on the broadcast. Yes. More Mookie Betts bowling.
Obviously, you're not a golfer.
It's a league game. Top of the 7th here. Baltimore is up 4-1 with 1 away. Tim is on his way to talk to David Ortiz. And I say this from a scout's perspective, Keith. Guy gets older. What happens? Ray's going to cheat on the fastball because the bat speed's not there.
First thing you look for.
Haven't really seen that with Ortiz.
Yeah, that period. Trust me, I was one of the people ready to write his obituary as a hitter because he had that period where it looked like you could just beat him with velocity. And it's not just that he's changed his approach, although obviously he's made adjustments over the years, but the bat speed kind of came back.
Right.
To where if you watched him last year, there was not an enormous difference in bat speed between last year and 4 or 5 years earlier. And that's incredibly unusual. But I will say this, it is characteristic of most of the really great hitters in baseball history that they've been productive into their late 30s. It's a separator between him and a guy like Jim Rice, who was done around age 32 or 33, because once his bat speed was gone, he was no longer a productive hitter.
Yeah, I was looking up some of those Red Sox legends, their final years. Not strong for Yaz, not strong for Jim Rice. So if Poppy could even have a 20 home run, 80 RBI season, that would be much better than some of those Red Sox legends in the past.
I always think of Steve Carlton. That's my worst final year of an unbelievable career.
That's a good one, because everyone always mentions Willie Mays of the Mets, but you're right, Carlton for a 4-time Cy Young Award.
He ended up pitching for the Twins with like a 10 ERA. I mean, he was just done. He couldn't, and I empathize. It's going to be very hard to acknowledge that your career's over.
Absolutely. You always want to force them to rip it off you.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened.
In fact, he might still have some
stitching
tatters, right?
Somewhere.
Yeah. But I remember also being, as a kid, Ryan and Carlton dueling for strikeout titles. My parents, especially my mom, she was the biggest baseball fan in the family.
Yeah.
Sort of teaching me about baseball. Those were the guys.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, Carlton just hit that last 2 years or so where it was just gone. This is not lefty anymore.
Always friendly with the media, though. Warm guy. It's interesting. You mentioned those strikeout totals. You go back and you see Nolan Ryan 383. You go, what?
What?
Wait. Are they still playing the same 162 games? It's still the same amount of
He just pitched every other game.
Yeah, like, oh my God.
When fans ask me about unbreakable records, I mean, you always think about like Cy Young's, Denton's, Young's, 5'11", my nemesis.
Denton, True Young.
Jack Shesbro's 41 wins. But those strikeout totals, barring a change in the game, those are never going to, no one's coming close to this.
Right. 57-14 for Nolan Ryan. Pretty ridiculous. So the Orioles tacking on another one here in the top of the 7th. They'll make it 5-1 now. And John Farrell has seen enough as he's making the stroll out here.
Not an ideal outing for Porcello.
Yeah, basically, Tim said he talked to Farrell before the game, so if he gets 6 innings out of Porcello, we'd be happy with that. It depends what kind of pitches, intensity and such. So if you go 6+, 6 2/3, giving up 5 runs, clearly doesn't have the effectiveness and the sharpness we would have liked to see, but did battle back after the shaky start, unfortunately for him. Does not end well. Pitching change means we'll make a change. We'll come back and more right for this. As we continue here on Major League Baseball Spring Training, brought to you by Head and Shoulders. Pitching change here being made at Fort Myers, Florida, at Jetwood Park at Fenway South, as Rick Porcello is done for the day after 6 2/3, 5 runs, and Ramirez now in for the Red Sox. You see his numbers from a year ago, 4.15 in 17 games. So John Farrell trying to get him a little bit of work here. Let's talk about Pablo Sandoval, though. Some news and notes to pass along. Did play 5 innings in a minor league game today. Did go 0 for 3, but they're hoping to have him back for next week. And it's one of the primary concerns when it comes to this Red Sox team is what kind of production are you getting from the corners. And at third base in Sandoval and at first base in Hanley Ramirez. We touched on earlier the fact that Hanley's going to try to make that transition to first. But for Pablo Sandoval, there's actually a picture, if we can pop it up here, that got the Red Sox nation in a frenzy with regards to Sandoval, because there's always this conversation about his conditioning, and for good reason. He has not been in good shape and has not followed through on his promise to try to slim down and be a little svelte. And, I mean, you can be as compassionate as you want to be, and you can try to be as tactful as you want to be, but that's just too big to play baseball on a regular basis, Keith.
Or he needs a higher waistband on the shorts.
Like that is something that gets everybody talking about, John. So they go, hang on a second.
You're playing a skill position where mobility is essential.
Yeah, you need to be able to move around. You've got to be able to put yourself in position. I mean, to his credit, he has been a little more athletic than most people would assume when you see that sort of body type out on the field. But you always, as an athlete, would like to give yourself the best opportunity to perform day in and day out. And I think that's the question that I think maybe some fans have, and maybe even some folks in the organization have, is he really doing that? And I think we'll see over the long haul and over the course of the season how often he can be on the game or be in the game.
Your body type, to some degree, is your body type. He's always going to be big. But then the question becomes, what are you working at?
Sure.
Are you motivated enough? Are you putting in the effort, at least, to keep your body under control? And when you see photos like that, and he's not the first player to face these questions, then it makes you wonder how much he's working at an essential part of the craft, because otherwise he can't play third either. You've already moved someone to first base. You don't have another option for Pablo, at least not this season.
And I'll say this, fellas, it's one thing to say, okay, because of his girth, he can't be as athletic or as agile as he needs to be defensively. But offensively, he's now an average player. His numbers, he's got like 10 home runs. He's hitting like 270. Like, you're giving him that much money, Keith, and if you have to struggle when it comes to defense or your weight or base running, well, you've got to put up some gigantic numbers. Last year, you're hitting 245 with 10 home runs and 47 RBI for $17.6 million.
Yeah, they didn't get close to the production. I think they figured he's not going to be very good at third base, but he's going to hit.
Right.
And the problem is, no, he wasn't very good at third base, and he didn't hit. And now, either you leave him at third and you're just unhappy overall, or even if you could move him to another position, well, if you move him to first or DH, he's got to hit even more to make up for the fact that he's in an easier position. And so they're kind of damned if they do, damned if they don't. There's no good solution unless he magically recovers the offensive form he had 2 years ago.
And to his credit, he was battling some injuries, battling some lower half injuries. He wasn't able to transfer his weight. He wasn't able to load up as well. I remember talking to him last year during the middle part of the season, and that was one of his things was, I'm just now starting to be able to get that weight transfer going. And so while the conditioning is definitely a question mark, that again tells you, or it raises the question, is he doing everything he can to put himself in the best possible position to succeed?
And I agree with you. He's not a bad athlete. That is not the same as being unathletic.
Right.
Which, of course, makes it a little more frustrating, because you think, what would he look like if he could shed some of the weight? And just, not even be thin, just be slimmer, and then the athleticism could show through. Because it's not like he doesn't try at third base. It's not there. For a guy of his size, he moves okay, but he's just getting to the point where you feel like the size is going to be so big. It's going to be such a distraction, such a detriment to his ability to move laterally at a position that demands quick movements.
And you talk to some of these Red Sox fans, they go, hang on a second. I get the fact that it's tough sometimes to put your weight down, and as Keith is saying, body types certain times, or genetic, etc. But we're paying you this much money. Get a dietitian, get a trainer, get help, get it done, because it's just not fair to your teammates.
Well, all of those comments come about only because of the lack of production.
Right.
Because bottom line is, if he's producing offensively, we can even forget about the errors that happen in the field, because he's helping put runs up on the board, and he's helping put W's in the column for us. So, I thought this was going to come back, guys. But that's the thing, is you just want to make sure that he's doing everything he can to be out there and be healthy and be productive. And I know a lot of these questions come just because of the lack of production. But if he turns into the old Pablo, I don't think we're going to have as many questions.
Let's go back to our friend John Kruk, who is in our studio in baseball tonight back in Bristol. Krucky, what do you think? Can Sandoval try to rediscover some of his magic?
You know, the thing with Pablo is he's such a free swinger that sometimes that can work against him and it can also work for him. You know, regarding his weight, I agree with Dallas. If he hits 280 with 15, 16, 17 homers and drives in 80-something runs, he's not fat. He's just a big boned guy. So, yeah, it's all about production.
Doug, I heard you laughing in there as well. I mean, that's the key, is because the optics of it just don't look good. You guys know what it's like, the way that the media and fans can criticize you. Krucky, you know that, listen, people are going to just take shots at you no matter what. For Sandoval, do you think, as Keith mentioned, if he went to first, if he went to DH, would that help his hitting? There's less to worry about playing third base?
Well, I can speak from experience about the 1 year I did go to be a DH, and I got larger because you have a lot of time between at bats.
It's definitely challenging.
You have a lot of time between at bats to go up there and do stuff.
That's a good point, Krucky. There definitely is a lot there when it comes to Pablo Sandoval. How about Hanley? He's making that transition over to first base. Tim said it's going well for him so far.
Yeah, you know, he was a shortstop, and he played third base, so he's used to that, you know, the action of the infield. I think it's going to make him a better hitter because when you play left field, sometimes your mind can wander. Playing first base, a new position, especially for Hanley, he's going to be thinking about so many more other things other than hitting, and I think it's going to help his hitting.
All right, Krucky, good stuff. We'll see you, Doug and Carl, tonight at 11:30 p.m. on Baseball Tonight. We're coming back with the bottom of the seventh here in Fort Myers, Florida. As you can see earlier today, David Ortiz and that farewell tour, they went speeding off with Jim Rice and Louis Tiant. A pretty cool moment for David Ortiz, who talked with our own Tim Kirkjian.
David, they took you around the warning track today in a cart on your final game here. How did that make you feel?
Feel great. I mean, you know, I've been coming to Fort Myers for over 20 years, and the fans down here that have been so super supportive, and it's great. It's great to share, you know, my last ride with all of them.
Right. I don't think I ever remember a player being honored like this at a spring training facility.
Somebody told me that today too.
Have you ever seen anything like this before?
I never saw it coming.
Now, what does this mean about what to expect this year when you're out there? Because you're going to get a lot of presentations. Are you ready for all of this?
I guess I'm going to have to be. You know, it's an appreciation, you know, people taking their time to honor myself. And, the unexpected happens, you know. I mean, I'm a guy that I never really expect anything, but I'm going to be very thankful, you know, and like I say, it's always an appreciation.
Right. When you look back at how Mariano Rivera was received at the end, Derek Jeter, do you want, in a way, to be kind of a part of that, to be in the same situation like they were in?
I don't know. I mean, like I say, you know, I'm going to really thank everybody for taking their time. And like I say, I never really expect anything from anyone. You know, I'm a guy that I'm all about having fun and doing whatever it takes to win ball games, you know. But I saw how everything went down with him and Jeter, and it was perfect, you know what I'm saying? So it's not like I'm expecting the same thing, you know what I'm saying? But we'll see how it goes through the year.
Last thing, how does your body feel as going into one last season in the major leagues?
Fighting through it, you know. It's just, this is the part of the year where, you know, all the toughness happens, you know, when you gotta be here early in the morning, go through all the drills, and then get prepared to play again. Got some long days in spring training. I'm not a big fan of spring training anymore, but as the season goes, you know, you start feeling better. Your body, you know, start feeling better, and mentally, you know that you just got to get prepared for this to play game.
David, good luck this season. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Back to you.
All right, Timmy, thank you very much. David Ortiz. Couldn't have said it better myself. Clearly a happy guy and enjoying the moment here, and clearly touched by the fact he's never seen this for any other player in this type of a venue. Spring training game, being honored like that. Clearly an example of just how much the adoring faithful of the Boston Red Sox appreciate him and want to give him all that he deserves in this final Major League season. It'll be his 20th season and 14th with the Boston Red Sox. Pretty impressive run of longevity, especially with the way things went down there with Minnesota. Now there's Mike Yastrzemski, by the way. How about this? So we're talking to David Ortiz, Tim Kurkjian is, and then it's Mike Yastrzemski, the grandson of Carl Yastrzemski.
Yes, correct. And graduate of Vanderbilt University. One of the best college baseball programs in the country.
Wow. Buster Olney fired up right now, the Vanderbilt
He's
shutout.
dancing around in his Vanderbilt underwear.
How much have you seen of this Yaz, Keith?
A lot, actually. Going back to high school, because he did a bunch of showcase events in high school, was seen as a guy who needed to go to college. He absolutely was. He's not especially tooled up.
Right.
Just seen as a polished high school player. Had a nice career at Vanderbilt. They've obviously been a very successful team the last couple of years, too. I think if he gets to the big leagues, it's as an extra outfielder. He really doesn't have the power to profile in a corner. He's not enough of a runner to potentially be able to play center field.
Certainly have some options there for the Baltimore Orioles when it comes to their outfield. We saw Nolan Reinbold earlier today.
Speaking of left field, by the way, they signed a Korean player to play left field and now appear to be trying to convince him to take a pay cut and leave to go back to Korea, which is kind of an underreported controversy, but I cannot imagine that ever happening to an American-born player. Hey, we just signed you to a 2-year contract, but we don't really want you, so we're going to tell the press that we're thinking about releasing you and hope that you ask out of your contract.
Yeah, very bizarre there. Tim, what have you heard about this story involving this player for the Orioles?
Well, he's really struggled this spring, and that happens sometimes. Remember, Jung Hong Gong of the Pirates struggled last spring, and there were questions whether he was good enough to play in the big leagues, and he became a really good major leaguer by the end of the year. But I don't think that's going to be the same case with Kim, and if he doesn't show vast improvement these last final days, I think they only have two options. He can go back to Korea, and I'm told make more money there than he could here, or he could accept a demotion to the minor leagues and would be a very highly paid minor league player.
So Yoon-Soo Kim, you see the bio blast here. Last 10 seasons in Korea, 4-time Gold Glove Award winner. Trying to make it over the Baltimore Orioles, and a situation that bears watching, because Keith is right. That would be awfully unusual. You sign a guy that rather than go to the minors or find a spot for him, you're going back to Korea. We shall see. 5-1 through 7 here in Fort Myers, Florida. Always have to lead. swing and a miss struck him out. A towering fly ball to right field.
There it is. Strike 3 called. What a night for Clayton Kershaw. Chris Bryant with a game-winning home run. One swing of the bat ends it.
Quadruple header of action on opening day. Coming off Sunday, April 3rd, we'll have 3 games, 4 games April 4th. I'll be in studio. Special baseball tonight's at noon and at 1 a.m. Eastern as well. Coming off that Cubs game. Dallas, where are you going to be?
Where's that?
Next Monday?
Next Monday. I believe I am in Anaheim.
All right. So Cubs Angels you'll be a part of. Keith, you'll be part of a game, I believe, on the 6th. Is that right?
Yes. Phillies at Reds, which will give me a chance to talk about a lot of prospects. Those would be 2 young
Two teams not expected to contend this season, but plenty of promise and potential.
We can talk about the draft. I think they pick 1, 2 in the draft, actually.
Oh, okay.
So there we go. I can do that.
Sure. You can do lots of things.
Yes.
We were talking earlier about our projections with regards to the American League. Dallas and Tim gave their projections. I want to have Keith weighed in as well when it comes to predictions. Let's go division by division. AL East, who do you have? As we see, by the way, Tommy Lane's in the game now for the Red Sox. Who do you have winning the AL East?
I do have the Red Sox winning the AL East. That's not going to help our reputation, huh? I can't make a case for anyone else. A strong enough case, I should say. I'm not saying the Red Sox are going to run away with it, but
Edwin and Jose, final seasons, going to contract years, so they want to get paid, so they're going to have monster seasons.
Oh. That's the Canadian in you speaking.
You know that Stroman's a legit #1.
I love Stroman. I do. I think they're light in a couple of areas. I think they're light in the back of the rotation.
Sanchez is a 5.
And I mean, I think the way his delivery looks now, he probably needs to be in the bullpen.
And in the bullpen, Storin and Osuna now.
Yes, and I loved the Storin pickup, I should say. But that was really the only really significant addition to the club they made all offseason. I think you got to expect Bautista to regress a little bit, Encarnacion to regress a little bit. These guys are getting older. It's not like the bat speed's picking up like we were talking about earlier.
Kevin Pillar, though. Come on, Pillar's going to win a gold. If it wasn't for Kiermaier, I'd love Kevin Pillar winning a gold glove.
Doesn't he need to be in the Red Sox, right?
Kevin Pillar. All right, so Red Sox, the whole talk, as we've done all day, is you think there's enough pitching behind David Price. You think Buchholz or Porcello can be a 2? Joe Kelly, maybe?
I think Kelly's probably better cast as a reliever. I think what they've got is David Price is a 1, and a bunch of guys will soak up innings and be about league average-ish or so.
Right.
But then they're going to score enough runs. This is basically built on the offense and the defense. I think it's a pretty good defensive club. They're just probably not going to. The problem I have with the rest of the pitching staff, it's a lot of guys who are going to be homer prone. So as long as you're not walking as little guys, you can get away with that a little bit.
Outfield defense definitely much improved with the move of Hanley Ramirez going from left to first. Jackie Bradley Jr. in center, obviously. If Pedroia is healthy, Ortiz's final year. John Fisher, our researcher, who's been hard at work helping Dallas Braden with the mock draft as well today, also handed me the AL East projected standings. So this, according to Baseball Prospectus, with the Fangraphs, and this is where they have it. So the Red Sox right now is an 88-win team, so they would agree with Keith and Dallas that they would win the AL East. The Jays 84-78, so you can't get everyone right. Yankees at 82-80. The Rays are a 500 team. They have the Orioles at 80-82. So what's interesting here is no 90-win team of the AL East, and the top one is Red Sox at 88 wins. The Orioles at 80-82 will be the best projection for a 5th place team.
This is the problem, and trust me, I look at these projections, I look at Baseball Prospectus, I look at Fangraphs. They tend to be very flat, especially the ones that rely on simulations. You simulate the season 10,000 times. What's going to happen is those outlier years where the Cubs win 97, those are going to be balanced out by a bunch of seasons where they win 88. So you very rarely see projections of teams to win 95 plus or to lose 95 plus. So you get everything kind of crammed together. I agree that I think the Orioles are the bottom team in the division because of some of the problems I outlined earlier. I think they end up much worse than 80 and 82.
In the AL Central, Dallas and Tim both went with the Kansas City Royals, only because, Keith, I feel like there has to be a surprise team. I'm going big on the Indians because I love all those young pitchers and those strikeouts. I know their offense isn't great, but you know what? Pitching in D, maybe they get a little luck and some Terry Francona.
That was going to be my pick.
Nice.
And it's, again, not like I think it's a 95-win team. I think that's a super competitive division. There's not a bad team in that division for me at all. And I think the Twins could be surprising, especially if Buxton comes out and is the Rookie of the Year this year at a position where they could use a little bit more production. And if Jose Barrios, the Puerto Rican right-hander, comes up and helps their rotation in May or June, that could be a big boost. They're going to get more help from their farm system over the course of this year than just about any other club in baseball. So they could make a run. But I think right now, and I reserve the right to change my mind before opening day, 6 times.
6 days to go. Yeah, you're right.
I'm going to say Cleveland.
I like it. In the West, I haven't heard anybody say anyone other than the Astros or the Rangers. I'm going to guess you're going either
in the other order.
Okay,
Rangers 1, Astros 2. And I think there's a gap between them and both the Angels and the Mariners. That Angels lineup, I mean, it's Mike Trout, maybe 2 or 3 average guys, and a lot of nothing.
But how does this happen? How do you go, all right, we have the best player in baseball. We've got your boy, the machine, who you've drafted now, Albert Pujols, so you're expecting a gigantic year from Pujols. But then there's just no depth at all. Like 5 through 9 is like awful.
I'm a big fan of Cole Calhoun. I love his athleticism. I love him at the plate against lefties as well.
But if that's your second best hitter.
Right. No, I understand. You'd like to surround the marquee player in our game at this point with some more pieces to help kind of put that whole puzzle back together.
And that is the inning here. So 5-1. We're going to talk about the MVP and the Cy Young. Our predictions when it comes to the American League when we come back. O's on Cruise Control. Baseball on ESPN is presented by Head and Shoulders. Live head first. And in part by the all-new LG G5. Life's good when you play more. Adnan Burke alongside Keith Law, Dallas Braden, Tim Kirkchin as well. Eric Carabel's been a part of our fantasy mock draft as well. MLB.TV Premium, everything you could have to expect and more. New low price for 2016. Watch every out-of-market game of all 30 teams live in true HD on over 400 supported devices. Blackout and other restrictions apply. Visit MLB.TV for details.
I use it all the time. I walk around the house with the iPad, watch a bunch of games.
It's awesome. I'm telling you, the way that society has now changed and that people have second screens and nobody ever actually watches them and they're always doing other things. I think with baseball it helps because you can literally be something on your laptop and then you have like literally your iPad open, your iPhone's on, the actual television. You can watch so many more games in so many different ways.
I'll watch, especially when we've got playoff games or Sunday Night Baseball. There's one game that a lot of people are watching. Get it on the screen and then I can be talking to readers on Twitter or on Facebook as the game is going because I know we're all watching the same thing.
Right. And that's the thing.
My jokes don't fall so flat.
I was about to say, Twitter sometimes can get a bad rap, and trust me, there's lots of negativity and things wrong with it, but that's the beauty of it. When you're watching a game like today, we're just hanging out here watching a baseball game. Twitter makes you feel like you're hanging out with other people, right, Dallas?
Absolutely. Like you're in the living room with them, sitting here shooting the bull.
Yep.
Having a couple cold ones.
Well, as scintillating as this conversation is, we're going to go back to Doug Glanville and John Kruk and get their thoughts momentarily with regards to who they think will be the AL MVP and the Cy Young. Doug, we'll start with you. Who do you like for the MVP of the American League this year?
I have to stick with Mike Trout. I mean, for the last 4 years, he's either won it or come in second place. And he's an injury away of someone in the Blue Jays lineup, not that I'm wishing it on him, to be one of those guys that just separates himself. I mean, every single category. And clearly they're going to have to, pitch around him. And even then, he's going to walk 150 times. I just love his game. He's a generational player. I think that's the reason why I have to go with Mike Trout.
Crocky?
Well, I'm going to go with Carlos Correa. I know I debated with Jim Bowden the other day about he's only been in the big leagues for 5 months, but when you watch him play, when you watch what he did last year in the postseason, the way he handles himself, the position he plays, the fact that the Astros are going to be very relevant this year as far as a pennant race goes, I got to go with Carlos Correa.
Jim Bowden pump fist right now, Crocky. He loves that pick. Dougie, how about when it comes to the Cy Young this year in the American League?
I like Chris Archer. He's not only raised his game statistically over the last 2 years, just improving, getting the walks down, getting the strikeouts up. He's emerged as that bona fide ace. He's got the ambassadorship to go with it, and I think his game has been raised even further. Just watching him work, the spring training. He obviously did the Cuba trip, but on top of that, he's a guy that works. One game he had a game that was interrupted due to rain. He only threw about 6 or 7 pitches, went into the bullpen, and decided to go and went 6 innings of a simulated game. So he's on it, and I see him breaking out this year and having a huge jump and making him a strong Cy Young candidate.
Well, pretty good pick there. Definitely a fan of the show. Crocky?
I'm going to go with Cole Hamels, and I know it's a tough pick because of the fact that he plays in such a great hitter's ballpark. He's going to pitch a lot of games in the ballpark at Arlington, known as an offensive park, but he also pitched in Citizens Bank Park where he won a world championship for the Philadelphia Phillies, and that was a great hitter's ballpark too. So he knows how to pitch in that environment, and I think when you get Yu Darvish back, now you have 2 aces in that rotation. The fact that their offense is going to be so good, he's going to win some games where he doesn't pitch his best, and I just think Cole Hamels is going to put together that season where he wins a Cy Young.
Yeah, Crocky, you mentioned Correa and Hamels, and I don't know anybody who doesn't like the Astros or Rangers coming out of the American League West. Thank you, gentlemen. We'll check back with you perhaps a little later on in this broadcast or tonight with Carl Ravitch on Baseball Tonight at 11:30 p.m. Eastern. Let's look at who Dallas and Tim have with regards to the MVP and the Cy Young. Dallas, we want to talk Cy Young first. Who you got, Chris Sale?
Cy Young, I like Chris Sale. I like the lefty, man. Lefty brotherhood. I mean, we're talking about a guy who was 3rd in MLB last year and 1st overall in the AL in strikeouts, and you pair that with a 1.8 walk per 9. I feel like he's really bringing it all together. He's going to put it all together, put together a Cy Young worthy campaign. They've upgraded defensively, offensively as well. So more runs scored, less runs scored on the defensive side of the baseball. I got Chris Sale. And as far as MVPs are concerned, I like Dougie in the stretch there, going with Mike Trout. But me and my boy Crocky, Correa, I love it, Crocky. Correa, for me, we're talking about a well-rounded athlete, power to all fields, and with the right amount of plate appearances, he could steal a few more bags. 14, I believe, on the year last year. So he's a guy who can put himself in the scoring position. Tremendous throwing arm, defensive prowess is there, and as Crocky said, they're going to be relevant. So Correa is my guy.
Red Sox scoring another run here at the bottom of the 8th. It's now 5-2 for Chris Sale and Carlos Correa. Tim, Carlos Correa is a guy you, Crocky, and Dallas all big fans of. You don't think it's too much too soon to expect an MVP for a really good young talent in Correa? I'll speak for Tim. He really just likes Correa's game and the fact he has that versatility and that all-around speed and the way that he became the catalyst for that Astros offense. He gets called up. He immediately became the best player on the team. And if you think Houston's going to do some damage this year, Correa has to be the star for them to be successful. Yeah, good point, Tim. All right, Timmy, talk to me about Correa. Why do you like him for the MVP?
Well, I think he's a transcendent player. That's how good he is already. He showed it last year. They put him 3rd in the order. The difference is this year, there's a double play. Maybe.
Almost, Timmy. It was a tailor-made double play. Yeah. Timmy is a play-by-play guy. So
no. Timmy jinxed him. Definitely not that. I Let me just finish here. Correa is going to have Jose Altuve and George Springer hitting in front of him for the entire year this year. And if Springer stays healthy, he's got a chance to be on base an awful lot. And I think with Correa hitting third behind those two guys playing for a really good team, he would be my choice for MVP, although there are a lot of really good candidates for the American League.
No, I hear your reasoning. The fact he's going to have some protection there and also a guy in front of him in that Astros lineup. You like David Price for the Cy Young in his first season in Boston, was second a season ago pitching with Toronto. And clearly, Tim, his numbers at Fenway have always been great. I believe about a 1.5 ERA for David Price.
Right, and he was basically second last year, and now he goes to a team that, in theory, could be very good, score a lot of runs, which might really help him. He's also got a closer now and a very good bullpen behind him. So you put all that together, and he would be my choice. But again, there are a lot of really good choices in the American League.
That ball drops in there, so the Red Sox now with runners in second. That was Benintendi actually there. So with 2 outs, the Red Sox chance to actually tie this game with a base hit. Keith, your picks, MVP, Cy Young?
Mike Trout.
Safe one. You
Best player in baseball.
Yeah.
Hey, I probably had a pretty good case to win it last year. He didn't have the narrative, but statistically it was at least a dead heat between him and Donaldson. And David Price for Cy Young Award for the reasons Tim just outlined. Also, I think that Red Sox defense is going to help him. He's going to a really good defensive club. I do worry about the middle innings with the Red Sox, with Carson Smith, who was so effective for Seattle last year. He's going to be out for a while, at least. I wonder...
What are you hearing about how long could be out a while?
They're saying it's indefinite, just trying to read between the lines a little bit. If he's not going to have surgery, if there's not a torn ligament, which is what was indicated by the MRI,
right,
I would be surprised if we saw him before June.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's a significant loss.
No, you're right.
He was very quietly very, very effective in the late innings for Seattle last year. He misses so many bats. It's an ugly arm action, but that also creates a lot of deception. I think hitters just have a very hard time picking the ball up.
Yeah, Smith is your 7th inning guy. Uehara the 8th. Kimbrel the 9th. That would be a good bullpen. Certainly, the Red Sox would be trotting out. Chris Sales, when I'm with you, Dallas, he's definitely due at some point. I mean, there's nothing against the other guys. Lots of good candidates, but Sales, one of those players. For a while, he was always underrated, and now everyone knows how good he is. And I can't think of a guy who would be more terrifying if I was a left-handed hitter to face than Chris Sales.
Well, it's coming at you from right field. It looks like he's starting it behind you, and it ends up 14 feet away from you, and somehow in between there, across the plate. And at 87 miles an hour, he's got a slider that'll wipe you out and leave you embarrassed. And from the right side, he's going to back foot that thing, or he can drop the changeup, and he's got tremendous arm action and arm speed on you, and that thing has really become a secondary weapon for him. So, like I said, I think this is the year he sort of puts all of those things together, along with his ability to gain control more and command more in the strike zone, as we saw the decrease in walks per 9. So, Chris Sale, that's the horse I'm riding.
White Sox have done a tremendous job with him, too. When I saw him at Florida Gulf Coast, he was a fastball changeup guy. He had a below-average breaking ball. Because you can see the arm slot, you kind of get on the side of the ball, it ends up flattening out. And I was one of a lot of people who said, you don't have the breaking ball you need to be a good left-handed starter. And then he was in the White Sox system for less than a season, and they just changed his hand position a little bit so he could get on top of the ball. They haven't really changed his arm slide. He's still well below 3/4. But he's on the ball enough that he can get some tilt on that slider. And that was all it took. He had the arm speed. He had that ability in the wrist to put spin on it. And it's gone from being a below-average slider to one of the best sliders in all of baseball.
And I think one of the guys you think about is you think about the unit. Randy Johnson, that arm angle, that slider, the deception, what it was, how that thing started against a lefty or a righty, and where it ended up. And I mean, the end result was always somebody dragging their bat back to the bat rack.
Sandy Leone here. Full count against Brock. Runners on second and third. So Red Sox offense fairly quiet for much of this game, but now it's something brewing here in the bottom of the 8th.
Benintendi, by the way, who just had that little bloop down the line. Red Sox first pick in the draft last June at University of Arkansas, was the Golden Spikes winner, SEC Player of the Year. Very strong pedigree, draft eligible sophomore center fielder with power, with speed. Red Sox feel like he's got a chance to advance pretty quickly. I put him in the class of the Schwarbers and the Confortos a year ago, who managed to get through the minors in 12, 13 months and help the big league club.
Look forward to seeing if Benintendi can make an impact as here Leone takes the walk. So it's been a fairly quiet game for the fans to be excited about, but now they got something going. Bases loaded. Buck Showalter's coming out as he has seen enough. So we'll have a pitching change here. We'll come back with plenty more here as the actual baseball game takes center stage. It's a good one now. The bottom of the 8th, 2-run game with 2 outs. Scott's MLB Pitch Hit and Run is the official youth skills competition of Major League Baseball. It's free for boys and girls ages 7 to 14. Play your way to the national finals and have the chance to compete during All-Star Week in San Diego. Find a local competition in your area at pitchhitrun.com. New pitcher on the mound here in a jam. It'll be Donnie Hart. Last season in the minors, a 1.49 ERA. You can see his whip, the strikeout to walk ratio. He comes into a game here for Buck Showalter with the bases loaded for what had been a rather moribund Red Sox offense that's now trying to tie up this game and perhaps take the lead here in the 8th. The final home game of David Ortiz's career when it comes to spring training action. Had a ceremony for him earlier today, and now Red Sox hoping to give Papi a win in his final home spring training game. That's certainly been a good crowd here on hand. And here that ball is hit up the middle, and the Orioles, in fact, will make the final play of the inning. So a little bit of drama here for the Red Sox, but they do score a couple of runs. 2-run games we head to the 9th here from Florida. Ready for your fantasy baseball draft? Come draft with the ESPN.com fantasy experts today and give your draft strategy a test drive at ESPN.com/mockdraftmonday. No mockery of our friend Eric Karabell, who joins us now on the Fantasy Gurus at ESPN. He has been, I wouldn't say dueling, but he has also been drafting along with Dallas Braden today.
Shadow boxing?
Yeah, shadow boxing is another good term. You're right, Keith. I think that's a fair. Is that apropos? You've been shadow boxing Dallas's picks today?
I've been watching closely.
And you're going to give astute judgments on them. You're not going to be flippant about this at all. You're going to take this very seriously.
I'm going to take this seriously, right? I can say nice things or mean things.
The thing I like about his first pick was awesome. Josh Donaldson.
Couldn't go wrong.
Came in hot, also Edwin Encarnacion. Contract here, the Parrot's going to be awesome.
2 Blue Jays. They score the most runs.
Very good. Let's go the rest of it. DJ LeMahieu at second.
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, he steals bases, hits for average. Course field's nice. It's a good balanced team.
How about Ben Zobrist? Now, I see it listed here as a shortstop, even though he's a second baseman.
Yeah.
But Zobrist,
that's his middle infield.
So we're already
spot.
cheating.
So here we go.
So there's his team.
Power arms, Price, Harvey.
Good strikeout totals. He got a lefty. I know he wanted a lefty.
How many people are in this league? 2?
Just 10.
Whoa. Yeah, how did you get everybody you wanted?
I mean, well, you look at this and you're probably thinking this is a great team, right? He's projected not to win. But he's not projected to lose. Well,
that doesn't mean anything. If I'm not projected to win, I'm clearly losing.
Right. What does that mean?
It's projected as a middle-of-the-road team.
Second place, first
middle-of-the-road team. You know what he did? He actually took 2 closers among his first 10 picks, which is something I personally would never do.
Yeah, that's dicey.
He also took Kimbrel, so he's going to get a lot of good saves with Jansen and Kimbrel, but he also could have taken saves in like round 14.
Yeah, see, that's poor strategy by Brady.
I don't want to go out and say that, but if you want to, go ahead.
I'm just saying a veteran fantasy player would have known that. Listen, this is what needs to be known. Dallas, when he plays with his fantasy guys, those guys know what they're doing. They're not Eric Karabell.
Exactly. To my defense, I'm fielding 5 starting pitchers in my home fantasy league. Those guys can't count innings. They can't.
They can't count, period. It's tough enough for them to keep up.
I actually like the A-Rod pick he made late in the draft. Now, that's an interesting pick for Dallas to make. Isn't it, Dallas?
Well, that's a good point.
Tell us about that pick.
Well, I think that was probably part of the broadcast where we were focused on the inning going here, and that's where our research fish, he kind of took over. But I mean, hey, you know what? I'm holding on.
Oh, so you're not taking credit for that.
Well, winging a prayer. Winging a prayer for A-Rod.
Wow, okay. A-Rod could hit 30 home runs again.
So. In October, he's going to take credit for that, though.
That ball's coming to us.
I
like that pick.
All right, so basically you like a lot of Dallas's picks.
I think he has an interesting team. I mean, obviously enough starting pitching. There's enough power. I don't know if there's enough speed.
And then the overall top 10, by the way, Eric. So Trout, Goldie, I love.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, that's the overall, and that. I mean, Bryce Harper really should be number 2. I mean, Bryce Harper's the best player in baseball right now.
Better than Mike Trout.
He's better than Mike Trout. He is. Now, from
a fantasy perspective.
Well, if Trout stole 20 bases a year, it'd be different. But he doesn't. He only stole a couple more than Harper did, and Harper still has more upside in him that I don't think Trout has. So, personally, I would not take Clayton Kershaw that high. I want power. I want that early.
It's probably.
But I thought it was a very interesting mock draft, Dallas. I don't know how often you have drafted.
I went through 3 mock drafts preparing for my scoring settings. This was the first time I had drafted with a little different setting, but definitely fun, definitely a learning experience for myself.
It showed. There was like a veteran presence in the room. I felt it.
Well, more fantasy talk in a second, but we do have Yaz up. Mike Yastrzemski is up, Tim Kirk. So what can you tell us about him?
Well, as Keith said, he's the grandson of the great Carl Yastrzemski, and he came from minor league camp today, so obviously he's not going to make the major league club this year. I think Keith's scouting report was probably right on about him, that he's not a particularly high prospect at any point, but this is so classic. Buck Showalter would bring a Yastrzemski to play a game at JetBlue Park.
It is rather fitting when you think about the fact it's David Ortiz's final spring training home game. Think of the lineage of the great Red Sox, and as Tim mentioned, the fact you got a guy like Yaz up there, the grandson of the great Carl Yastrzemski.
He might end up in left field at some point this year.
Yeah, what a bizarre situation, man.
It really is. I mean, it's unlikely. He's still in the minors, obviously. They've got major league talent, but I mean, I don't know if Kim's going to play. Reinhold's going to stay healthy. Richard's a Rule 5 guy.
A Rule 5 guy was not a significant prospect.
No, I don't know.
In the Tampa system where he was. And now the Orioles are saying he's going to be the everyday left fielder?
Seems a little odd.
Looking at the rest of Dallas's team here. So you like the A-Rod pick. He's got Zimmerman off the bench, Pujols on the bench. What about John Lackey? Do you think he's going to sustain the success he's had?
I do. I think, you know, an underrated strikeout pitcher, good whip last season, staying in the same division on a very good team, should get plenty of run support. I mean, he's got good run support guys there. I mean, Cole Hamels will be supported in Texas, obviously. Right. David Price will be supported by the Red Sox. So, yeah, I like what he did. Steven Matz, I can't predict 200 innings for Steven Matz.
Health is a concern.
Health is a major concern. It's always been throughout the minors, as Keith can tell you. But, you know, for where he took Steven Matz, I mean, as like a 6th or 7th starting pitcher, it's an excellent pick.
So I appreciate that.
I'm trying. You have more tats than I do. So I'll be nice.
So wait, you have Albert Pujols on your bench, and Steven Matz can't crack your rotation.
and he's projected like 6th or 7th. So, you know,
can I get in on this league?
I don't think you play anymore, right?
No, I do not play.
How were you as a fantasy player, Keith? Like in your heyday?
I won one of those.
Won one of the experts.
One of the experts leagues.
Yeah, a long time.
Then I went out on top. I didn't want to go all Steve Carlton on it.
Okay.
Steve Carlton again.
A lot of Carlton stuff.
All right, that's running. Eric Carabell, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
As always, you can find Eric on Twitter, all over the fantasy stuff on ESPN.com as well. We're headed to the bottom of the ninth here from Fort Myers. Bucci tonight after the NCAA Women's Elite 8 game. Stick around for SportsCenter at night. We'll have Women's Elite 8 highlights as well as the NHL. Of course, they will Bucci all over spring training and NBA. SportsCenter at night tonight after the women's game right here on ESPN and streaming live on Watch ESPN and the ESPN app.
I think we'll have a college hockey reference.
Oh, God. Can't get enough of it. Frozen 4 action. Going to be awesome. Quinnipiac, baby.
How about that?
Tim, I got to ask you. You were watching the March Madness last night. Can you believe the fact Syracuse is in the Final Four?
No, I can't. I didn't even think they were going to get in the tournament, but having had 2 children that went to school there, we had a great time last night texting back and forth and watching a 10 seed overcome a 16-point deficit in the second half to beat a 1. That doesn't happen very often. That was tremendous stuff last night for any Syracuse fan.
Kelly Kirchen ecstatic. Jeff Kirchen fired up. Our producer, Andy Jacobson, in fact, who's normally available at all times, made it clear to us over email. He was not taking any requests, any information. I don't care what you want to know about Brad Brock. You cannot find out between 6 and 8:30 yesterday. Congrats to all the Syracuse fans. By the way, which, you know, those that, Dallas, interesting for you, someone like yourself does not come from a media background, because inordinately, people who work in media are either Syracuse or Northwestern people. Which makes for them, a lot of people find them obnoxious and aggravating. I don't know if you've found that.
From Tim, no, I actually was talking to Tim yesterday, and he let me know that he was actually going to be in the building, and he let me know that, you know, everybody was watching and everything. And Timmy, it's been rumored around here at Fenway South that you actually made a halftime speech in the locker room, and that's what brought them back. Is this true? Is there any truth to that?
No, there's no truth to that. But I did meet Jim Boeheim and that, a long time ago, and that was pretty cool. But no, nobody called me at halftime because I was having dinner with Fish, and by that point, we shouldn't be doing any interviews. Believe me.
Our researcher, John Fisher, doesn't actually mean he's having dinner with like a piece of cod. Dan Shaughnessy was also there, I believe. Shaughnessy all in on the hoops. Tell us Larry Bird stories.
Right. It was great. Larry Bird, Bill Russell, and of course, I paid for dinner. So.
The very generous Tim Kirkshin. As we finish up shop here with regards to the Red Sox and the Orioles, just to kind of forecast our predictions for both of these teams. Dallas, what do you see for the Orioles this year in the American League East?
Well, I don't see them taking it, obviously, but I see them being very competitive. Obviously, the question marks are surrounding the health issues with Wieters, some of the pitchers on the team, the consistency from the starting staff, the back into that rotation, the Jimenez's, you know, Gossman, whether or not he can answer the bell. So I don't see them being as productive as who I've got slated to take the East and their counterpart today, the Red Sox, but I don't see them completely falling flat either.
And the Boston Red Sox, Keith, you like them a lot this year to win the AL East.
I do. And again, I mentioned earlier, they do have some weaknesses, some areas of concern. The back end of the rotation, the middle relief core of Smith is out for a significant period of time. But I think it's the best or second best offense in the division. I think it's a great defensive alignment. I think David Price was exactly what they needed. I think they overpaid for Craig Kimbrell, but I think he's also something they absolutely needed. They needed just better production, someone who could miss more bats in the ninth inning. And as I go through the strengths and weaknesses of the other clubs in the division, I just think that the balance for the Red Sox is stronger than any of the other potential contenders, particularly the next three. I think Baltimore is clearly the one clear non-contender in the division.
Yeah, concerns when it comes to the Rays and their hitting, the Yankees and their health, as we'll put this one to bed as the Baltimore Orioles knock off the Boston Red Sox. 5-3 is the final, so good news there for Marshall who joined us earlier. He was explaining games like this. You're certainly worried about health. You don't have too many of your regulars playing, but by the same token, you want to get some guys some play. There are still some battles as well. So the Orioles win this one 5-3 from JetBlue Park at Fenway South in Fort Myers, Florida. We're back to wrap right after this.